Chapter 419. 2 days had passed since the ambush in the valley. In the next 2 days, the soul-stirring multi-sided battle appeared to be calm. Golden City did not respond to the death of the Xinjiang sect team, and Flaming Valley did not care about the death of thousands of elite soldiers in the front line. After the King of Harmony River launched a surprise attack, he retreated back to his headquarters, and the hunting operation came to an end. However, everyone knew that this silence was just brewing a bigger outbreak, and it was hard to say who would be the first to make the next outbreak. Everyone was quietly watching the change. At the same time, Wang Lu was not idle. In these 2 days he took Lan and Xiang Liang to all the cities and fortresses in Golden City, meeting many people and talking a lot. Of course, the whole process was basically done by Wang Lu. Xiang Liang and Lan were just onlookers, and then incidentally experienced the food of Golden City. In addition to eating, they had nothing more to do. Regarding this inexplicable action, both of them remained silent. Lan was accustomed to Wang Lu's unexpected behavior, while Xiang Liang was out of high professional quality. He was a qualified soldier, and the nature of a soldier was to obey. Although the position of the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect should be more in the commander level, Xiang Liang was obviously more accustomed to the former. Not long after he got along with Wang Lu, he found out that Wang Lu was a natural team leader. Perhaps in tactical arrangement and execution he was stronger than Wang Lu, but in matters outside of combat Wang Lu was the expert. And professional things should obviously be left to the professionals. Of course, if Xiang Liang's choice fell into the eyes of his sect's elders, he would certainly be scolded. However, Xiang Liang's habit was really difficult to change. Fortunately, Wang Lu's inexplicable behavior did not last too long. The next night, in a food street in a bustling city of Golden City, Wang Lu, with a satisfied smile on his face, found Xiang Liang and Lan, who were experiencing folk snacks. The two of them were quite strong. When Wang Lu arrived, the table was already in a mess. In front of Lan, there were hundreds of bamboo skewers, while Xiang Liang was playing with a golden meat bun with great interest. Wang Lu smiled and asked the two, "How's the taste of the snack?" Lan embarrassedly threw away the half-eaten skewers of roasted meat in her hands, not knowing what to do. Xiang Liang nodded generously. "It's a very good supplement. It's nutritious, has a reasonable structure, and is easy to cook. If the conditions are right, we can promote it within a certain range. It should be able to effectively boost the morale of the soldiers." Wang Lu was already used to Xiang Liang's reaction. He pulled a stool beside the table and sat down. Then he grabbed a meat bun in front of Xiang Liang and ate as he spoke. "Including the ones I met today, in the past 2 days, I have already met with most of the city masters in Golden City, and the information that needs to be integrated has basically been processed." The organizational structure of Golden City was very interesting. The master of Golden City was the Supreme King, and under him were dozens of subcities. Each subcity was an independent administrative unit, just like feudal vassals. However, the master of Golden City could suppress his ministers with his supreme strength and majesty. Thus, the overall political environment of Golden City was unprecedentedly stable. Therefore, the contact between Wang Lu and the subcity masters was not to instigate their rebellion. In just 2 days, no matter how professional Wang Lu was, it was impossible for him to rely on his silver tongue to collapse the organizational structure of Golden City. There was only one thing he needed to do: extract information. When it came to information, Wang Lu's complexion was somewhat strange. According to the contact with the subcity masters, the situation of Golden City is really strange. As for the other 4, no matter how bad the relationship between the Lord and the Blood Spirit is, at least we are comrades in arms who have a common goal. Only the master of Golden City has a conflict with the Xinjiang sect team, which is like a father-killing enmity. Not long ago, the master of Golden City even made a 10-day appointment with Jianglu. Within 10 days he must bring your head to see him, otherwise he will seal Qianghua, the king of Gold Spirit, forever. Upon hearing this, Lan and Xiang Liang were extremely surprised. They had heard that the master-follower relationship of Golden City was not harmonious, but they didn't think that it had already reached the point of being incompatible like fire and water. Then, according to the time, today happens to be the day of the deadline. The master of Golden City is a man of his word, so I think Sister Qianghua will be kept as his mistress for the rest of her life. If Lady Boss Feng Ling, who always cooperated with Wang Lu, was here, she would certainly carry out an in-depth discussion on the specific matter of keeping a mistress. However, the 2 listeners of Wang Lu were very uncooperative. Xiang Liang was very puzzled and asked, "This is very unreasonable. Qianghua's cultivation base is #1 in this world, and she is the most powerful weapon of Golden City. It's completely illogical for her to be abandoned. Wang Lu said, the master of Golden City is not an incapable ruler, so there must be a reason for this. Unfortunately, there are too few clues, so I can't guess what the significance of this move is. However, at least I can put forward a guess. Senior brother Xiang Liang, if we assume that senior sister Qianghua is forever trapped in Golden City, then what do you think the situation of the five spirits' power struggle will be like? Xiang Liang frowned. If senior sister Qianghua is excluded, then, Wang Lu said, then there's no need for the remaining four to form an alliance. Senior brother Xiang Liang, why don't we go and destroy senior sister Zhou and senior brother Zhan first? What? Even with Xiang Liang's good psychological quality, after listening to Wang Lu's suggestion, he felt that he somewhat could not keep up with his thinking. A few days ago Wang Lu was still as close as a family with those two, but now he really turned hostile faster than flipping a book. Wang Lu explained, you see, because of their respective rulers, the alliance between senior sister Zhou and senior brother Zhan will certainly last until the last moment. And if the two of them join forces in this world except for senior sister Qianghua, no one can match them. Therefore, how about we defeat them first and then we decide the winner and loser? Xiang Liang thought for a moment, and then suddenly solemnly stood up. If this is your idea, then forgive me for withdrawing from the alliance. Wang Lu asked, why? Xiang Liang said, first, I don't have the confidence to defeat you one-on-one in your arrangement. If there are only you and me left among the five spirits, for me, I will certainly lose. Second, I will not trust an ally who easily betrays the alliance. If you can betray them, naturally you can also betray me. Third, I don't like it. Upon hearing Xiang Liang's third reason, Wang Lu smiled with great satisfaction. Senior brother Xiang Liang is indeed worthy to be the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect. Your righteousness is admirable. In that case we can now move on to the next round. With that, Wang Lu's look turned serious. I think so far all of this is *king trap laid out by Qianghua. For Xingjing Sect team, the biggest problem in this round is that their starting advantage is too big, which naturally attracts hatred. Being targeted by the four forces is their fate. And no matter how strong Xingjing Sect team is, they can't twist the alliance of the four forces. If I were Qianghua, I would rather cut off one of my arms to disintegrate our four forces alliance first. Judging from the current situation, it was developing along this trajectory. I don't believe that with Qianghua's ability, she would be suppressed by a mere immortal dream puppet in this world. She definitely did it on purpose, putting on the appearance of a tied-up bird ready to be plucked. Whoever believes it is real is a fool. As for what the master of Golden City is thinking, none of us know. Since he can use the blood mark to suppress Qianghua, naturally he can also release her. After listening to this, Xiang Liang fell into contemplation and then said, it's all intentional? Including the defeat in the valley ambush? Of course it includes it. Or to be precise, regardless of the outcome of that battle, it's all in the plan of Xingjing Sect team. For Xingjing Sect team, it's best to solve the great threat of the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect. If the battle goes well, even a Yi who is used as a chess piece can be cleaned up, killing two birds with one stone. However, even if the battle fails, it doesn't matter. The sacrifice is nothing more than the small fries on the periphery. The real core character of Xingjing Sect team is only Qianghua, so it doesn't matter if the others die. On the contrary, this heavy loss can make others relax their vigilance. And what we have to do now is to stick together. No matter how the outside situation changes, we must firmly lock onto one goal and never waver. Before we completely defeat Xingjing Sect and Golden City, nothing else is important. Listening to Wang Lu's words, Xiang Liang gradually revealed a smile. This conclusion was exactly what he wanted. As a soldier, the most taboo was to have vague goals, disunity of thought, and overcautious in everything. And Wang Lu's words were too much to his liking. Very good. Wang Lu also smiled. It was finally done. In these 2 days, in addition to collecting intelligence and locking on to Qianghua, the most important task for Wang Lu was to stabilize Xiang Liang. This inflexible lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect was the ally that he needed to win over the most. In the future decisive battle with Qianghua, Xiang Liang's strength was indispensable. At the same time, in these 2 days, how could Xiang Liang not be observing Wang Lu? This young and already famous disciple of the same generation had long aroused his curiosity. In this test, how to deal with the relationship with Wang Lu was a big test for Xiang Liang. He didn't know how to think too complicated, but at least in these 2 days of getting along, based on his intuition, he was willing to make friends with Wang Lu. Thus, the result of these 2 days of getting along was the establishment of a real alliance. Wang Lu and Xiang Liang tacitly held hands. They were ready to welcome the storm together. However, when the two palms touched, Wang Lu's palm suddenly bloomed with a faint blue light, and a horizontal water curtain rippled in his palm. It was a beautiful scene, but when Wang Lu saw the water curtain, his face suddenly turned livid. A moment later he angrily crushed it, splashing water everywhere. Damn it, are those two idiots shooting a romance film? Xiang Liang's eyes were keen. Before Wang Lu crushed it, he saw the words on the water curtain. Although he was somewhat confused, the aggressive momentum of the person who wrote it had already hit him in the face. I can't coexist with that bastard Zhan Zai anymore. Junior brother Wang, if you're loyal, come back and help me destroy that inhuman thing. As long as you help me, I will give you the 5 blood spirit crown. Chapter 420. Senior Sister Zhou, in the face of the overall situation, don't be unreasonable, okay? Inside the eternal tree in a quiet tree hole, Zhan Zai, with a tired and irritated look, shook his head. In front of him, Zhou Mumu sneered, and her eyes were overflowing with contempt. Making trouble out of nothing? You have the face to say that, Zhan Zai. In any case, 10,000 Arts sect is a famous upright sect, but their lead disciple is actually a prostitute. Do you want me to turn a blind eye to it? I'll say it for the last time, there is no love affair between me and Shaman. Not now, but if left unchecked, who knows when there will be. Zhou Mumu pointed at Zhan Zai's nose. Do you think I'm blind? The two of you are exchanging flirtatious glances with each other. Let me tell you, if you immediately break off with Shaman, I will still recognize you as my junior brother, otherwise, what are you going to do? Zhan Zai's ice-cold voice suddenly dropped the temperature in the tree hole. When all is said and done, when did the relationship between you and me become so harmonious? We are competitors. If you insist on provoking me and refuse to give up, then we might as well decide the winner and loser here. I don't have the patience to send an unruly person like you. I'm unruly? Zhou Mumu almost turned hostile on the spot, but she suppressed her anger and made the final confirmation. Very well, since you insist on doing things your own way, then I have nothing to say. Let's prepare to meet on the battlefield. Zhan Zai sneered. Meet on the battlefield? Do you think you can make the decision? Eternal Tree and Harmony River have been connected by marriage for generations. Do you think you can sow discord between the two with just a few words? Looking at Zhan Zai's shameless face, Zhou Mumu only felt unprecedentedly annoyed. However, she had to admit that as long as the relationship between a Yi and Shaman was still there, it would be very difficult for her to really confront Zhan Zai on the battlefield. A Yi, that idiot, was already hopeless. Half a day ago, after withdrawing from the ambush in the Valley of Golden City, a Yi directly returned to Eternal Tree with Zhou Mumu, and the return gift was his fruitful hunting results. However, after returning to the Eternal Tree, Shaman's reaction was far colder than expected, and the ambiguous relationship between her and Zhan Zai could be seen by people with eyes. Zhou Mumu turned pale with fright because she had always thought that Zhan Zai was at least from an upright sect and should have a bottom line when doing things. As a result, unexpectedly, the long-cherished wish of that mentally ill person, a Yi, was fulfilled. Zhou Mumu immediately became furious. She unceremoniously reprimanded Zhan Zai for being a despicable person. Zhan Zai, on the other hand, was baffled. During the period when he and Shaman were in seclusion, it was true that they had a tacit understanding and their relationship had heated up. However, to say that there was any unbearable behavior, that was simply nonsense. Zhan Zai asked himself, as the lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect, since childhood, he had wholeheartedly devoted himself to learning, so how could he have any love affair? No matter how much Shaman surprised him, she was nothing more than a pink skeleton. The closest contact between the two was when he helped Shaman to change her meridians and wash her marrow, which required them to be completely honest with each other. However, throughout the whole process, Zhan Zai only held Shaman's hand and didn't do anything else. Moreover, at that time Wang Lu bumped into him halfway through the process of changing his meridians and washing his marrow, which was an extremely embarrassing situation. However, even a despicable person like Wang Lu didn't misunderstand him and just wanted to stop joking around. How could Zhou Mumu, on the other hand, never stop? Thus, Zhan Zai's counterattack was a matter of course. Originally, he and Zhou Mumu had a common friendship, so at this time, under his anger, he didn't yield even an inch. Naturally, Zhou Mumu was angered to the point that her immortal heart swayed, thinking, no wonder some people said that the group of otakus in 10,000 Arts sect are shameless perverts. They have been lacking friends of the opposite sex for a long time, so in order to enjoy the pleasures of intimacy, they would do anything. Originally, Zhou Mumu thought that it was a malicious rumor, but now it seemed like it was not groundless. If she let go of this shameless slut Zhan Zai, Zhou Mumu wouldn't be able to die in peace. Therefore, she directly sent a message to Wang Lu, asking for help. There were some things that, although Zhou Mumu was helpless, she believed that Wang Lu would certainly have a way. Not to mention that Zhan Zai already had a criminal record. He once tried to pursue Wang Lu's forbidden woman Lu Li. And in Zhou Mumu's view, people like Wang Lu, who were used to being strong, often had a special obsession with cleanliness. It didn't matter if you offended him, but if you dared to touch his woman, he would definitely destroy your whole family. Thereupon the message was sent out. Zhou Mumu sneered and waited for Wang Lu to come and join her side by side to cut down the evil. However, not long after the message was sent through the water curtain, she heard Wang Lu's roar in her ear. "Surnamed Zhou, do you have nothing better to do? Now is the important time to establish a united front against Zhan Zai, yet you tell me that you and Zhan Zai are absolutely irreconcilable?" Zhou Mumu's beautiful face turned pale. After gawking for a long time, she inexplicably roared back, You actually yelled at me? Do you know what's going on here?" Wang Lu snappily said, "What else could happen? Why would an outsider like you care about other people's marital relationship?" You. Zhou Mumu choked several times and couldn't speak. "You already knew? And then you turned a blind eye to it?" "I'm not as sick as you. Senior Sister Zhou, think about it carefully. This is the story setting of an immortal dream land. We are not here to protect other people's happiness in marriage. Our goal is," Zhou Mumu angrily interrupted, "Enough. You're all the same. Just because this is not the real world you can do whatever you want? You can even throw away any bottom line? Didn't the elders of your Lingjian school teach you that no matter where you are, you must maintain a pure heart? Wang Lu, I thought you were a good person, but now it seems that I was wrong. If you want to collude with Zhan Zai, that's up to you. Let me tell you, I can't tolerate this kind of thing." Wang Lu took a deep breath. "Well, Senior Sister Zhou, calm down, I'll explain it to you in detail." "Hello. Damn, you dare to hang up on me?" After cutting off the call with Wang Lu, Zhou Mumu took a deep breath and temporarily suppressed her anger. She couldn't tell why she suddenly couldn't control her emotions. In fact, what Wang Lu said was right. This was the scene of an immortal dreamland. No matter what was done to the people in the scene once they passed the trial, it would turn into a dream bubble. What's more, this was other people's business. Even a Yi himself didn't say anything, so what qualifications did she, an outsider, have to care so much? It was just that when she and a Yi went hunting together, every time they succeeded, a Ye's childlike innocent smile, as well as his unreserved love for his wife. Zhou Mumu felt that such feelings should not be tarnished. In fact, she didn't care much about the 5 blood spirits crown. In this trial, all the lead disciples of the 5 uniques were gathered, but there was only one final winner. In the face of powerful enemies like Wang Lu and Xianghua, Zhou Mumu from the beginning didn't feel that she had much hope to persist until the end. Therefore, compared to the result, she paid more attention to the process. Although her relationship with a Yi had always been bumpy, and his maverick behavior repeatedly made her angry, she was gradually attracted to him. A Yi was sentimental. Such a person could be knocked down on the battlefield, but he should not be betrayed emotionally. Knowing that all of this was just an illusion, Zhou Mumu still couldn't help it. Perhaps many people would laugh at her for being too deep in the play and stupid. However, she set foot on the immortal path so that she could have the qualifications to be willful and stupid in her long life. If she had to be cautious in her immortal cultivation, step by step without any joy, then she would rather not cultivate this immortal path. Thinking of this, Zhou Mumu suddenly felt that the Grey King pill in her jade mansion gradually bloomed. The king pill that was forced into a deep sleep by the secret method of Kunlun seemed to be awakening. After perceiving this, Zhou Mumu's heart was suddenly moved. Then she closed her eyes and forcefully suppressed her restless immortal heart with the Kunlun immortal technique. She took a few deep breaths, and the mana in her body was evenly distributed and permeated. Then she opened her eyes again and there was a smile on her face. Not far from her, Zhan Zai saw that Zhou Mumu had calmed down and coldly snorted. "Have you made enough trouble? For the sake of the alliance between the 2 sects, I'll pretend that today's matter didn't happen. I'll go first, you can stay and play by yourself." With that, Zhan Zai was about to leave this secret tree hole. However, just as he turned around, an alarm sounded behind him. He immediately launched his thunder body and his body turned into a lightning bolt. Thunder was invisible and formless, extremely hard and strong. Once his thunder body was launched, Zhan Zai would have an unrestrained explosive power. However, this time he felt as if he was trapped in a cage. His whole body was under an irresistible pressure, and his body felt like it was about to collapse. Above his head, a Vajra ring buzzed and vibrated, slowly rotating, and an endless suppressive force spread out from it. Zhou you. Zhou coldly said, Junior brother Zai, when this matter is over, I will go to 10,000 Arts sect to apologize. However, please leave this place first. You dare to sneak attack me? No need to struggle. Although I'm not good at fighting, it's not that easy to break free from my Vajra ring. Senior brother, if you don't want your Jade Mansion to be damaged, then activate the mechanism to leave this place. Although I despise your behavior, I don't want to hurt you. In your dreams. Very well, then I'll wait for your body to collapse, and the mechanism will automatically activate. Zhou said and increased the magical power output of the Vajra ring. Zhan Zai roared and lightning bolts flickered. Junior brother, next time remember, be a man and act with integrity. Sneak attack, yet you still have the face to talk about acting with integrity? Zhou kept her mouth shut. Her right hand shook, and the Vajra ring began to violently vibrate, dropping a primal chaos halo that bound Zhan Zai layer by layer, gradually tightening and strangling him. Zhan Zai tried his best, but he still couldn't break free. Although he had mastered 10,000 methods, when he was sneak attacked by the Vajra ring, he didn't have the ability to fight back. However, just as he was about to be strangled, the tree hole suddenly opened, and a tall figure appeared at the entrance. Yi carried the spear on his shoulder and curiously asked, "What are you guys doing?" Chapter 421. The sudden appearance of Yi immediately reversed the situation. When Zhan Zai saw her, he hurriedly opened his mouth to call for help. However, just as he opened his mouth, Zhou suddenly increased the output of her transcendence energy. Rings of golden light fell one after another, covering him so tightly that there was no gap. Not to mention opening his mouth to speak, even breathing became difficult. In this world without the king pill, his internal breathing technique was also suppressed, and Zhan Zai was gradually forced into a dead end. Seeing this scene, Yi was quite surprised. You guys are very heavy-handed. I think the wood spirit is about to be strangled to death by you. Zhan Zai cursed in his heart, I'm about to be strangled to death by your blood spirit. You still have the time to say such sarcastic words, are you blind? Zhou didn't say a word. Right now, she only wanted to kill Zhan Zai as quickly as possible. As for how to explain it to Yi later, she didn't want to think about it. Speaking of which, Wang Lu told me that people can find great pleasure in suffocation. Could it be that the two of you are now cooperating to pursue pleasure? Zhan Zai was already suffocating, so when he heard this, he almost spat out blood. Zhou magical power was also shaken. That bastard Wang Lu always likes to joke, but you actually, really have a mental problem. However, just as she thought of this, Yi suddenly stopped smiling. He came over and patted Zhou on the shoulder. I've been looking for you for a long time, and it just so happens that I have something to tell you. Let's put aside the matter of comparing notes for now. Being touched by Yi's palm, Zhou magical power almost collapsed. She became even more anxious. I'm helping you, okay? Only by killing this person today can your family be safe and sound. Otherwise, with your IQ, sooner or later your family will be separated. However, Yi's hand on her shoulder became more forceful. Mumu, it's urgent, let's go. Zhou shoulder shook, trying to shake Yi's hand away. However, the next moment, a bloody light lit up in the center of her palm. Zhou whole body quivered, and the magical power she condensed was scattered by this palm. Clang, the Vajra ring fell to the ground, and Zhan Zai's Thunder War body regained its freedom. He glanced at the master and follower standing side by side, sneered, and flew away. He didn't even look back. Zhou couldn't care less about Zhan Zai. She looked at the hand on her shoulder in disbelief. You know what you're doing? Yi helplessly said, Can't help it, who told you not to listen to me? I can't use force on you, so I can only use the blood talisman. I'm asking you if you know what you're doing? Zhou roared angrily. The grievance in her heart had reached its limit, and her eyes couldn't help but be filled with tears. Do you know what you're doing? Yi sighed and patted her on the shoulder. This time I have seen everything I need to see. Fortunately, Shaman's injury is not too serious. With the help of the wood spirit, she recovered very quickly. Although part of the essence of the eternal tree had been taken away, its foundation was not damaged and could always be slowly restored. The two children had hidden themselves well at the time and were not even startled. "There's nothing I can do here. Since it's all right, there's no need to stay here," Yi said and then moved the spear on his shoulder. "Besides, the five spirits' power struggle is not over yet, so my home should be on the battlefield. Therefore let's go to Golden City together." "Alas, you don't listen to me. Blood talisman is precious, don't always squander it like this, okay? When the blood talisman is used up, wouldn't I be reduced to the same level as that little girl in Grey Mountain? At that time, don't say anything about being handsome, I will definitely be ashamed to death. Please give me some face, okay?" After suffering several blows in succession, Zhou Mumu finally gave up her insistence. "Very well, suit yourself. This matter should not be delayed. I've already talked to Shaman, let's go." The two of them left the Eternal Tree and went straight to Golden City. They were in a hurry as if they were fleeing from a defeated army. From their triumphant return from Golden City, they didn't even have time to rest for a night in Eternal Tree City. The two of them moved very fast and before long, they crossed the border between Eternal Tree and Golden City. It was just as they set foot on the land of Golden City, Aye's body suddenly swayed and he uncontrollably fell down. Zhou Mumu was taken aback and hastily reached out to hug him. However, she saw that Aye's face was as pale as paper, without any trace of blood. "You're hurt?" Zhou Mumu hastily cast a healing spell, only to find that Aye didn't have any internal or external injuries. It seemed like he was just too weak. What did you do?" Aye reluctantly smiled. "It's rare to come home, so I accidentally played with Shaman too much. Play your sister." Zhou Mumu put her hand on Aye's back and poured her magical power into his body to explore his condition. What she saw left her bewildered. What Zhou Mumu saw was an empty building with 4 walls and rotting pillars that could collapse at any time. That was Aye's Jade Mansion. Once upon a time, his Jade Mansion was still prosperous and magnificent. However, at this time, it seemed like it was dying, decaying everywhere, and its vitality was extinguished. In the five spirits' power struggle, among the 5 sovereigns, only the Master of Golden City could suppress everything with absolute strength. The other few individual combat power was not outstanding. However, that was relative to the 5 spirits, which were the lead disciples of the 5 uniques. Among them, Aye's individual combat power was far beyond that of his peers. When he used the blood-marked divine spear, he also had the power to fight the Master of Golden City, but now... What the hell is wrong with you? Don't give me an unreliable reason, I'm not as stupid as you. Seeing that Zhou Mumu was pressing him, Aye thought about it but couldn't think of a reason to fool her. He could only wryly smile that he didn't have the adaptability of Wang Lu and then frankly tell her. "It's because of the blood mark?" "Blood mark?" Aye explained, "To summon the blood spirit in addition to the necessary catalyst, one must pay a sufficient price to condense the blood mark, and then use the power of the blood mark to control the follower. This is the rule set by the blood spirit temple. And there is only one source of the blood mark, blood sacrifice. Moreover, it must be the blood of the follower." Zhou Mumu was startled. "Blood sacrifice of the follower? I've never heard of it. Because only the 5 sovereigns know this secret, and the blood mark is the only proof that the master can control the follower. Therefore the blood spirit temple will not let you know too much. Back to the blood sacrifice, the so-called blood sacrifice of the follower is not necessarily related by blood. For example, the little girl of Grey Mountain sacrificed all of her men of sacrifice. Those men of sacrifice have followed the master of Grey Mountain for generations. For the master's word, they would not hesitate to die. However, when it came to the little girl's generation, there should have been no master and servant distinction. However, because of the 5 spirits' power struggle, she killed them all. What's even more unfortunate is that the blood mark that was obtained with such a huge sacrifice has all been wasted by her." Zhou Mumu still felt incredulous. "Then what about Shaman? Did she also use the blood sacrifice of her own kin?" "Shaman's situation is better. As a part of the Eternal Tree, the sacred leaf can transfer this part of the cost to the Eternal Tree. Therefore, she used the blood sacrifice of the Eternal Tree's seed, which is the reserve of the sacred leaves for the critical moment. Although it's a pity, it's better than sacrificing living people. In Flaming Valley, the king of Flaming Valley personally killed his wife and children. The so-called blood relatives are no different from pigs and dogs to him. As for the situation in Golden City, I'm not clear about it, but presumably, it should not be an exception. Finally, as for me," Ayi said with a proud smile on his face. However, an ominous premonition suddenly rose in Zhou Mumu's heart. Although Aye's reputation in Harmony River was good, His closest kin were nothing more than Shaman and his 2 children. Those 3 were now safe and sound. In other words, Yi said with a smile, "Mumu, you're really smart. I can't touch my wife and children, so in addition to sacrificing myself, what else can I do? Perhaps if I desperately look for them I can find a few familiar friends, but to sacrifice friends in order to fight. That face is really ugly, I can't do it. I am the king of Harmony River, the glory of this country belongs to me alone. Therefore when someone in this country pays for it I will not decline. This is a handsome king. I chose to use my own life to condense the blood mark. Perhaps it's because my vitality is particularly tenacious, or perhaps it's because I'm really handsome that other people have to sacrifice their whole life to get the blood mark, but I only need to sacrifice a certain amount of my lifespan. Moreover, the power of the blood mark is a notch higher." With that, Yi let out a long sigh. A circle of blood light appeared on his body, and he suddenly gained a bit more strength. Without the support of Zhou Mumu, he stood up in high spirits. Seeing this, Zhou Mumu trembled with fear. Yi had clearly used another blood mark, but the object of blessing was no longer the spear but the body. Sacrificing his lifespan in exchange for a moment of physical strength, in the final analysis, it was like drinking poison to quench thirst. Moreover, Zhou Mumu remembered that when Yi used the blood mark several times before, each time he used 2 blood marks, one to bless the spear and the other to bless the body. The latter was used to forcefully offset the weakened state after using the blood mark, but in this way, wouldn't it accelerate his suicide? From the moment I chose to sacrifice myself, I was doomed to die. Blood sacrifice is not a simple addition and subtraction. The blood spirit temple will eventually collect the price I pay. As a warrior, I am not afraid of death, but I really can't feel at ease with my wife and children, especially Shaman. Although she is smart and intelligent, she is very weak and clingy. She has always been accompanied by someone. If no one is by her side, she can't do anything. I've been worried about what Shaman would do after I leave." Zhou Mumu smiled bitterly and said, "So, you idiot, you're trying every possible way to wear a green hat on your head. I'm already a dead person. Don't tell me I want a living person to be a widow for me? As a qualified husband, isn't it a natural responsibility to find a suitable home for the beloved?" Fortunately, this time, it seems that Shaman has become a lot stronger and more mature. I no longer have any attachment and I have no regret. Zhou Mumu found it somewhat difficult to understand. Can you really be so free and easy? Of course. Because a sentimental person is not handsome at all, and I am the most handsome. Yi confidently said, his eyes full of sincerity. Zhou Mumu finally had nothing to say. "So what are you going to do now? Live in seclusion and live alone for the rest of your life?" "Of course not." While speaking, Yi was in high spirits, and his eyes revealed a blazing fighting intent. "I'm going to fight the master of Golden City, now." Chapter 422. I want to fight the master of Golden City one-on-one. What? After experiencing several violent twists and turns, Zhou Mumu's spirit had become numb. However, a yes statement still surprised her. When it came to the master of Golden City, a yes face was filled with eagerness. His eyes shone and the spear in his hand danced endlessly. "Actually, I wanted to do this from the beginning. Among the 5 kings of this world, the master of Golden City has always been the leader. Legend has it that he is invincible and even omnipotent, but I have never seen it with my own eyes. As a warrior, I have never experienced the strongest skill in this world, which makes me die with everlasting regret. Previously, because I had too many concerns, I never dared to go all out. But now I have no regrets." Zhou Mumu somewhat stiffly asked, "Then how are you going to fight him? Do you think he will see you?" Yi said without hesitation, "That's why I want to pay him a visit. From here, I will march in a straight line straight to his capital city, Misty City. I don't need to worry about not seeing him." Yi chuckled and said, "Single-handedly, a king against a king, just thinking about it makes me feel that I'm so handsome." After Yi finished enjoying himself, he looked back at the sluggish face of Zhou Mumu and somewhat embarrassedly said, "Speaking of which, I'm really sorry. Following me, a master who has long been dead, the 5 blood spirits' crown, is actually doomed to not be in your hands." Zhou Mumu coldly snorted. "You also know that you're sorry?" Yi said, "So you see, since I summoned you, I have been obedient to you. Even when you hit me with the diamond ring, I have no complaints." Humph. Zhou Mumu turned her head sideways, looking unhappy. But in fact, she didn't have any entanglement in her heart. As she said when she learned that the opponents were the other 4 lead disciples of the 5 uniques, especially powerful enemies like Wang Lu and Xianghua, she immediately gave up the idea of winning. Compared to the final result, what was more important was the process. Even if it was just a game in the immortal dreamland, she would still devote herself to it, whether happy or sad, and then work hard for her own beliefs, which was more important than anything else. Just as Zhou Mumu was about to say something, she heard a Yi say, "The next battle will be my own, you don't need to follow me." "You're fighting alone? You make it sound so nice." Zhou Mumu sneered. "You are my master. You will drag me down no matter what, okay." Yes, when the master dies, the servant will also disappear. However, being recalled by the Blood Spirit Hall was still better than dying on the battlefield. Also, I'm used to being alone. If you're by my side, you might drag me down. Drag. Zhou Mumu was tongue-tied, and then she couldn't suppress the anger in her heart. She unceremoniously pulled out her diamond ring and swung it around, causing a Yi to see stars. "Now lead the way. I must let you see the power of Kunlun's support before you die." One day later. Wow, this is the hometown of the Master of Golden City. What a spectacular sight. A Yi looked at the majestic city in amazement. His eyes were firmly attracted by the 10,000 stone steps that reached the clouds, and he found it difficult to extricate himself. Behind him, Zhou Mumu unceremoniously scolded, "Don't be crazy. The army of Golden City is about to surround us. If you don't want to die, then move. My magical power can't last more than a few rounds." Only then did a Yi suddenly realize what was going on. He retracted his gaze from the stone steps and turned around. Behind them, several groups of golden clouds rapidly approached from the horizon. They were the Golden City pursuers who were in a sorry state. At the same time, a wide and long line of blood extended from the horizon all the way to his feet. On both sides of this line of blood, countless corpses piled up like a mountain. As planned, a Yi moved forward in a straight line from the border all the way to the capital of Golden City. Along the way he killed everything that stood in his way. Such an arrogant posture caused a strong shock in Golden City. More than 10 gold-clad legions as well as 10 times more miscellaneous legions went all out to encircle and suppress them just for 2 people. And it stood to reason that under such a powerful army, even if the entire Harmony River was the enemy, it would still be easily crushed. However, with his own life as the sacrifice and the blood-marked divine spear as the weapon, a Yi had reached a whole new realm, which was not something that the ordinary gold-clad legions could match. With the full power of the blood-marked divine spear, a single spear strike could scatter a golden cloud. And with the help of Zhou Mumu's Kunlun immortal method, a Yi became even more elusive, which was doubly difficult to deal with. The huge military superiority of Golden City could not play its role at all. Instead, because of the large number of people, they appeared bloated and were easily toyed with. In just one day, the 2 of them broke through the layers of encirclement and killed their way to the misty capital of Golden City. The 2 of them looked back and felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. They actually did it. With just the 2 of them, they actually broke through the nationwide defensive line of Golden City. Of course, there were many reasons for this. For example, the main force of Golden City was still entangled with the barbarians of Flaming Valley. For example, the high-end fighting force of Golden City Shengjing Sect Team was nearly wiped out after the ambush in the valley. For example, Zhou Mumu's mind was unobstructed in one day, and her smooth king pill almost regained its vitality, which complemented a Yi. Another example was a Ye's use of 13 blood marks in one day, which was truly shocking. No one knew when it started. Sacrificing one's life to refine blood marks completely became a kind of overkill. According to a Ye's estimation, he could at most refine 8 or 9 blood marks before he would run out of ammunition. However, unexpectedly, the more he fought, the braver he became, and the more condensed the blood marks were not a burden at all. Perhaps my handsomeness has moved the blood spirit temple, so I'm simply spared from death? A Yi laughed and paused the spear in his hand. In a split second, blood sprayed from the tip of the spear onto his face, which made a Ye's handsome face look gloomy. And since there's no danger to my life, then I won't be polite. Master of Golden City, this is my gift for our first meeting, please kindly accept it. A Yi let out a long laugh. The blood on his face evaporated and wrapped around the spear. Then the spear flew out of his hand and, like a lightning, stabbed the supreme throne above the stone steps. The pursuers behind them were aggressive, and he and Zhou Mumu were already exhausted like oil lamps. However, in this desperate situation, a Yi still put all his mind into offense, without even the slightest consideration for his own survival. He was already a dead man, so how could he fear death? This life-risking spear directly blasted through the great protective array around the capital. With a crisp cracking sound, the spherical protective shield over the capital shattered, and in a split second gold, silver and jewelry fell like rain. The golden jade great array that had protected the capital for thousands of years was broken in one blow. However, the power of the blood-marked divine spear did not diminish as it continued to fly toward the throne of the city master. Inside and outside the capital, there were cries of alarm and wails. For many years, this was the first time a foreign enemy extended their tentacles to the throne. Before this, no one had ever been able to break through the defense of the gold-clad army. No one believed that this spear could really threaten the master of Golden City. However, this spear meant the dereliction of duty of the gold-clad army, which meant that the master of Golden City would have to use manpower that he did not need to use. Boom! The blood-marked divine spear exploded in mid-air, and the blood mist tumbled. The three golden lights flickered in the blood mist, looking battered and exhausted. However, Harmony River's spear that challenged the supreme of this world was also intercepted. An exclamation came from the gold-clad army, "Pure gold guards." Among the tens of thousands of gold guards, pure gold was revered. It was rumored that the master of Golden City had 12 supreme personal guards, and any one of them had the tyrannical strength of the gold-clad army. It was just that, until now, this was the first time people saw the pure gold guards in action. A trifling 3 people were able to block the blood-marked divine spear. The pure gold guards were indeed worthy of their reputation. Suddenly, the morale of Golden City was boosted. Everyone scrambled to be the first to rush forward, fearing that the credit of killing the master of Harmony River would be divided by others. However, everyone only saw a blur before the master and follower figure flashed, directly crossing the long distance, breaking through the heavy encirclement, and appearing under the stone steps of the misty capital. It turned out that the main purpose of a Yez spear strike was to break the great protective array of the capital, creating a smooth path for Zhou Mumu to cast her spell. "Good, the throne is right in front of us," Yi excitedly roared. The tens of thousands of stone steps seemed unreachable, but how could it be compared to the distance that he crossed from the border to here? The meeting with the master of Golden City was just around the corner. However, the next moment, the clouds above them shone brightly, and more pure gold guards floated down from the clouds. 3 for. In the shocked eyes of Yi and Zhou Mumu, 12 pure gold guards gathered one after another, forming an insurmountable barrier. The heavy breath of the pure gold guards made it difficult for people to breathe. The tens of thousands of stone steps once again became incomparably long. Yi somewhat helplessly reached out to retrieve the blood-marked divine spear, smiled and asked, "Supreme, are you that afraid to fight with me? Then I'll beat you until you have nowhere to hide." Yi roared. His spear was once again suffused with blood-red color. The precious blood mark was added to the spear, and the tip of the spear shone dazzlingly, reflecting a Yez face that was full of vitality, just like the last ray of light. Zhou Mumu silently stood behind him. Her diamond ring shrouded the area with a radius of several miles, which also formed an indestructible barrier. Outside the barrier, thousands of soldiers and horses could not overcome it. And in the battlefield that Zhou Mumu delineated, a battle that surpassed the limit instantly entered the white-hot stage. The bright red light surged endlessly. With the support of the blood mark, Yi was unstoppable. "Shaman, your face looks very bad, do you want to take a rest?" In the eternal tree, Zhan Zai asked with concern. Shaman smiled and shook her head. The woman's face was pale, but she persisted in her cultivation. "There are still a few problems that I haven't figured out." Zhan Zai hesitated and said, "This is not urgent, right?" It's you who said that time is the most precious wealth." Facing Shaman's sweet smile, Zhan Zai felt that he could not resist. He had to lower his head and turn his attention back to the spell analysis blueprint. It was an ancient secret method passed down by the eternal tree for thousands of years, which was quite difficult to analyze. The two of them racked their brains and felt exhausted. It was just that, Zhan Zai always felt that Shaman's physical energy consumption was much faster than normal. Especially in this day, Zhan Zai simply watched her go from full and moist to haggard. Could it be that her academic focus was even higher than his? Thinking that his master was actually so diligent, Zhan Zai could not help but reveal a satisfied smile. In particular, the dispute with Zhou Mumu in the tree hole not long ago made him feel that the present peaceful time was precious. Zhou Mumu, for a disciple who was taught by the old antique of Kunlun sect, This academic atmosphere is something that you can't understand, right? Zhang Zai was very pleased, but he did not notice that Shaman's breath was rapidly weakening, far beyond the normal state. Chapter 423. Speaking of which, Mumu, I suddenly remembered a sentence that Wang Lu once said. Which sentence? A person who doesn't care about face is invincible. How could you think of this sentence? Because I found out that such a peerlessly handsome person like me is actually going to be defeated in the hands of a shameless rat. Isn't this the confirmation of Wang Lu's words? He, the supreme of this world, the Golden Jade King, seems like he's just a villain who wins with numbers. In Misty City, the decisive battle under the stone steps had lasted for half a day. This Moths to the Flame battle was far more tragic than the imagination of Golden Jade King. The 12 pure gold guards of Golden City were all out, and they were also under the supreme throne. No matter how one looked at it, the master and follower of Harmony River didn't have the slightest chance. However, half a day later, the cloud above Misty City burned like fire, the 12 pure gold guards were all injured, and the white stone steps were broken. The battlefield was incomparably tragic, but the master and follower still stood firm. Although he was already an arrow at the end of its flight, Aye's exuberant fighting spirit was not extinguished. The spear in his hand was covered with cuts and bruises, but it was still pointed straight at the top of his head. Although it's a pity that I can't personally defeat the master of Golden City, from another point of view, I also disdain to fight against such a coward. Let alone in today's battle, you and I have driven straight into Golden City and killed our way to the supreme throne. His invincible prestige has been completely lost. To be able to tear off his face even if I die, it's worth it. Zhou Mumu said, the behemoth that everyone feared in the past is actually strong in appearance but weak in reality. I wonder how the other three forces would react if they knew about this. After half a day of fierce battle, the two of them actually no longer had the strength to fight again. However, after all their hard work, they couldn't even see the face of the master of Golden City, which really made them unwilling. Therefore they used their last strength to ridicule him. However, even if they were insulted, the master of Golden City was still indifferent, sitting upright in the clouds. Only the 12 pure gold imperial guards regained their composure and surrounded him. Regarding these 12 opponents who had been fighting for half a day, Aye had long been annoyed. Especially when he thought that he was likely to die in the hands of these minions, a hostility rose in his heart. Very well, the killing move that I originally prepared for the master of Golden City will be used on you guys. As a result, another blood mist bloomed. However, compared to the beginning, the power of the blood mark had become negligible. Aye took a deep breath and barely squeezed out the second blood mark. Only then did he manage to adjust his strength back to normal. Although Aye didn't know where these blood marks came from, he knew that this kind of overdraft behavior had come to an end. This miraculous surprise attack was finally coming to an end. At the same time, the golden-clad soldiers who had sensed the danger began to clamor loudly and surround them. However, Zhou Mumu raised her hand, and the primal chaos Vajra ring flipped up and down. The space within a radius of a mile was forcibly severed by her, and no one else could approach. And after completing this action, Zhou Mumu fell down soundlessly. Her mana was exhausted, her primordial spirit was overdrawn, Kunlun's secret medicine was even more exhausted in the previous half a day of fierce battle. Now she even found it difficult to maintain her own existence. T of this, her, the sect's her T, the her T her sect, master of sect, was her T about. T to Wani to say, a Chen, T of this sect of a sect. Aye, don't let me down. Although Aye didn't look back, he felt the woman's gaze. Oh, are you kidding me? How could such a handsome man like me let a woman down? But, is it an illusion? Why do I seem to see shaman? Sure enough, there's still something I can't let go? Wiping away the trace of sourness from the corner of his eyes, Aye held the spear with both hands, roared, and charged forward. At the same time, in the eternal tree, Zhan Zai finally solved the problem that had been troubling him for a long time. Well, as long as I change the order of the 5 elements, the whole array diagram will no longer have any flaw. Hey, deducing a 360 loop array diagram in half a day, I have successfully broken my own record. My primordial spirit seems to have become a bit more condensed. Sure enough, heaven rewards the diligent. After gently wiping the sweat from his forehead, Zhan Zai finally had the time to look up and saw Shaman's pale face. Unknowingly, the woman had fallen asleep while leaning against the wall. No matter how slow he was, Zhan Zai could still see Shaman's weakness at this time. He turned pale with fright and hastily stepped forward to put his hand on the woman's forehead. Using the internal inspection method, he saw that the once lush green jade mansion had unexpectedly turned into a withered color. "What the hell are you doing?" Zhan Zai was shocked and angry at the same time. He quickly took out the secret medicine refined by his sect from his mustard seed bag and gave 5 or 6 of them to Shaman. These secret medicines were the gift that he could get as the lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect. They were priceless and even exceeded the expected income of this immortal dream land. However, Zhan Zai didn't care so much at this time. He couldn't just watch Shaman die, and he couldn't just watch his long-planned plan fail. After taking the elixir, Shaman slowly woke up. A trace of blood appeared on her face, but the color was very unnatural. Seeing this, Zhan Zai was distressed. Shaman's foundation was clearly injured, which could not be easily recuperated by ordinary elixirs. "Shaman, although I don't know whether you are poisoned, injured, or possessed by the devil due to excessive practice, but you should be clear about what your physical condition means. You are not a reckless person like a Yi. You have always done things rationally. How could you make this kind of mistake?" In this regard, Shaman just softly smiled. "I'm sorry. I don't need you to be sorry." Zhan Zai found it difficult to keep his calm. If sorry can solve the problem, what's the point of our previous efforts? In this 5 spirits power struggle, the weakest is actually Eternal Tree. Not to mention Golden City and Flaming Valley, we are actually not even as good as Grey Mountain. Grey Mountain at least has Wang Lu. And that Lan has a strange skill. What about us? We have nothing. In order to make up for our weakness and strength, I have been planning all night, and you have also paid a lot of painstaking effort. Now we are only a few steps away from success. Don't drop the ball at this time, okay? I'm sorry. In the face of Shaman's apologetic expression, Zhan Zai was filled with anger but had no way to vent it. He wanted to curse several times, but it was like a fishbone stuck in his throat. We have a chance to win. After a long silence, Zhan Zai reluctantly suppressed the excitement in his heart and said in a sinking voice, "I have told you this more than once. Although it seems that our strength is the weakest, in fact, our potential is the strongest. I know that you may not think so, and you also don't understand the significance of my special training for you during this period of time. As the sacred leaf of Eternal Tree, you inherit the pure wood element power. You are good at nourishing and growing but not good at fighting. No matter how you cultivate, it is difficult to change this deep-rooted characteristic. Let alone let me help you. Even if I invite the elders of my sect, it would still be difficult to train you into a qualified warrior in just a few days." Zhan Zai said with a somewhat bitter smile, "But when have I ever lied to you? I said we have a chance to win, and that is absolutely not a lie." Shaman somewhat curiously tilted her head and softly asked, "Oh?" Zhan Zai said, "Shaman, in your opinion, who is the strongest creature in this world?" Shaman weakly replied, "The master of Golden City is the supreme of this world. His strength is far beyond that of others. This matter even women and children know. Wrong, all of you are wrong." Zhan Zai shook his head in amusement. Even women and children know. How could the opinion of women and children be taken seriously? Perhaps the master of Golden City is indeed far more powerful than others, but to say that this world is the strongest, Shaman, you should be aware of this. Unfortunately, you are blinded by a single leaf, and you didn't find that the real treasure is buried next to you. Shaman revealed a doubtful look. Although she had regained her vitality under the effect of the elixir, she was still extremely weak, and her thinking had become very slow. Fortunately, Zhan Zai didn't really expect her to give the answer. He answered his own question. The strongest creature in this world is none other than the Eternal Tree. This tree of God has lived for tens of thousands of years. It can support the rise and fall of a world. One of its thick branches can support a city, and in its trunk hundreds of millions of creatures have multiplied. Who in this world can be compared with such an existence? No matter how strong the master of Golden City is, could he be stronger than the Eternal Tree? Zhan Zai said, "Unfortunately, the Eternal Tree is detached from the world and does not have independent wisdom. Although its power is strong, it is not used by anyone. You are the noble sacred leaf, you can call the wind and summon the rain within the shade of the tree, but you can't borrow more power. Humph, what a big waste. You, the inhabitants of the Eternal Tree, regard this tree of God as a sacred object, worshipping it for generations without daring to blaspheme it, but don't tell me I can't see the value it contains? You are the sacred leaf, the ruler recognized by the Eternal Tree. As long as your method is slightly improved, coupled with a bit of ambition and boldness, you can completely control this tree of God." Control? the eternal tree? Even though Shaman was extremely weak at this time, she was still shocked by Zhang Zai's bold conjecture. How could the eternal tree be controlled by human power? This tree of God has lush branches and leaves that cover the sky, containing hundreds of millions of creatures. Even if I am the sacred leaf, if I put my primordial spirit into the heart of the tree, I would still be shocked by its enormity. It's simply impossible to control such a creature. Zhang Zai sighed. Of course you alone can't do it, but there's still me. What I'm best at is calculation and the control of power. As long as you have my cooperation, the initial control of the eternal tree is not difficult. I have deduced it dozens of times, so it will never be wrong. As long as you can persist in practicing the method that I teach you, in the future, you will have a better fit with the eternal tree. By then, I am confident that I can make the eternal tree rise from the ground and transform it into a weapon of war that no one in this world can match. At that time, let alone Golden City, even junior brother Wang Lu would have to concede defeat. Therefore, Shaman, please cherish this short and precious peaceful time. While other people are desperately trying to tear open the space for you, you must cultivate my method with peace of mind, and then obtain the 5 blood spirit crown and become the supreme in this world. You can do whatever you want. Shaman listened in a daze, and only after a long time did she let out a sigh. Zai, you never told me about this. Zhang Zai proudly said, if you believe me, why would I say so much? If you don't believe me, why would I say so much? Having said that, deep in Zhang Zai's heart, he actually just wanted to give Shaman a surprise one day. He really wanted to see Shaman's surprised and admiring eyes when the eternal tree rose from the ground. Unfortunately, things turned out contrary to his wishes. Shaman gently shook her head. Unfortunately, I have no way to witness that miracle. While speaking, the woman's figure suddenly became somewhat transparent. My time is running out, so there are some words that I have to say. Shaman stood up and gently placed her hand on Zhang Zai's cheek. Thank you for taking care of me during this time. If I didn't know a Yi first, perhaps I would really fall in love with you. Unfortunately, while Zhang Zai was still in shock, the woman gently kissed him on the cheek. One last thing, please, help me take care of the 2 children, okay? Zhang Zai was full of astonishment. Before he could reply, Shaman's figure had already disappeared without a trace, as if she had never existed. Chapter 424. Brother Zai, my condolences, Eternal Tree, Sacred Leaf's residence. Wang Lu spoke earnestly. In front of him, Zhang Zai looked haggard, like a walking corpse. How should I say it? Although Shaman left you, at least she left the child to you. As Wang Lu spoke, he felt that it didn't sound like a consolation, but a sarcastic line. However, thinking of the actions of this group of idiots, it was not easy for him to hold back his laughter. However, considering the upcoming situation, Wang Lu still needed to borrow the strength of this loser, so he could only continue to do his best to comfort him. Moreover, you might as well look at it from another angle. Shaman, the Lord, is dead, but you as a follower are still alive. This is simply a miracle. Before Shaman left, she passed the position of the sacred leaf to her eldest son to maintain the existence of the sacred leaf. Considering that the new master of the eternal tree is still young, she appointed you as the regent and let you listen to the state affairs as a follower. At present, you are the actual controller of the eternal tree. The hundreds of millions of creatures in the eternal tree are under your control. The forest fairy clan that Shaman came from regards you as their absolute leader. The 3 great joys of life, promotion, getting rich, and death of a wife. Once you get them, what more can you ask for? Seeing that Zhang Zai was indifferent to this sincere consolation, Wang Lu couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Sure enough, he was worthy to be the lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect, already immune to the topic of women. That idiot Zhou Mumu was worried that Zhang Zai would make the king of Harmony River cuckold. She didn't even look at who the other party was. This was the lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect. Inheriting the glorious tradition of the 10,000 Arts, he was destined to live a lonely life. Even if he went to junior apprentice brother Hai Yun Fan, he wouldn't be able to get a woman. What's more, how inexperienced did he have to be to not see the unbreakable deep bond between a Yi and Shaman? The 2 of them might have different personalities and they might have some intolerable flaws, but their deep love for each other that made them willing to sacrifice everything for each other was enough to offset everything. Would such a person cheat? That was as unrealistic as saying that Wang Wu had picked up the moral integrity she had abandoned for many years by the roadside. When Wang Lu first proposed to unite with Xiang Liang to cut off the Eternal Tree Alliance, it was not a complete joke. At the same time, he put the focus of the 4 Forces Alliance on Xiang Liang because, in theory, there was no need to spend too much effort on him. What a pity. This group of fellows were more impatient than the other, not waiting for an explanation at all. Moreover, they were especially self-righteous, and their style of doing things was especially radical. They were like mad dogs in heat, completely uncontrollable. Of such chess players could only sigh in helplessness. Although it was a great but the price water yi and mu and God. Zhou mu and the water and Lu and tree and God. The battle in Misty City had shocked the whole world. The king of Harmony River and Sacred Leaf Shaman broke the heavenly throne, and more than half of the 12 pure gold guards were lost. Golden City lost all its face. In fact, Wang Lu could guess the intention of a Yi. In addition to his muscle-filled brain that could not be suppressed, his remaining bit of wisdom made him think that this method could boost morale and make all sides unite against the common enemy. It had to be said that this simple wisdom was indeed practical in general, but the current situation was extremely complicated, and the result of wishful thinking often backfired. While constantly deducing the changes in the situation in his mind, Wang Lu said to Zhan Zai, "I heard that you have previously planned an amazing strategy of eternal tree stands tall on the earth. Once it succeeds, you can sweep this world and be invincible." Unfortunately, Sacred Leaf Shaman did not have the time to cooperate. "I'm very interested in that strategy." Zhan Zai swept his indifferent gaze at Wang Lu. "So what if you're interested? Shaman is no longer here." "Shaman is no longer here, but she left 2 children in your hands. Although the 2 children are young, they have inherited their parents' peerless aptitude. One is born with affinity to water and the other with affinity to wood. According to our standard, both of them are at the level of heavenly spirit root. And the eldest son inherited the position of sacred leaf and naturally fused with the eternal tree, so his aptitude is even better than his mother." Zhan Zai impatiently waved his hand to interrupt him. "So what? It's too late. With Shaman's deep foundation, it will take me at least 10 days to half a month to help her sort out her physique and improve her method. Let alone these 2 children? They simply can't afford this heavy responsibility." Wang Lu suddenly stopped talking and tilted his head to look at Zhan Zai. His scrutinizing gaze made Zhan Zai extremely uncomfortable. "What's wrong?" "I just think," Wang Lu lightly said, "right now you're like a hungry idiot who is burning with lust. You don't even have the ability to think normally. You're the lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect. The sect's illustrious name has fallen into your hands." Zhan Zai sneered. "Did you come here just to provoke me with filthy words?" Wang Lu said, "No, I originally wanted to seek your support, but now Zhan Zai has been completely reduced to a waste. Your academic spirit has been completely submerged by the pleasure of men and women, not even worth mentioning." "Damn it, you're taking advantage of me." Half of Zhan Zai's body turned into lightning as he reached out to grab Wang Lu's collar. Surprisingly, Wang Lu didn't resist with his non-phase sword, but just looked at him with a smile. "Do you really want to fight with me?" Zhan Zai gritted his teeth. "I'm in a bad mood right now, don't King provoke me." Wang Lu laughed. It's rare for a disciple of 10,000 Arts sect to say such a hooligan line. "Zhan Zai, for the sake of our friendship, I will give you a reminder. The strategy of standing the eternal tree is not completely unfeasible. Even if Shaman is not here, there is still a way to control it. And that way, I shouldn't have reminded you." Hearing this, Zhan Zai's brows tightened. There is still a way? To control the eternal tree, there must be a strong core to act as a bridge. Previously he pinned his hope on Shaman, but now, who else could take over Shaman's position? After thinking about it, Zhan Zai still couldn't figure out the gist of it. Looking at the look of Wang Lu, he was particularly irritated. "Don't keep me guessing. If you really have the sincerity to form an alliance, just say it." Wang Lu sneered and then his smile faded. With a heavy face he said, "Actually, the method is very simple. Isn't it enough to strengthen the current sacred leaf with the power of the blood mark?" "The power of the blood mark?" While muttering to himself, Zhan Zai finally vaguely guessed Wang Lu's method. His pupils shrank sharply and his breathing stagnated. "Yes, the blood sacrifice of the loved ones in exchange for powerful strength. And doesn't the current sacred leaf happen to have a top-notch sacrificial offering with excellent qualifications? His younger brother has inherited the bloodline of the King of Harmony River. If the blood is sacrificed, I'm afraid 1 blood mark is equivalent to more than 10 ordinary blood marks, which is enough to evolve the current sacred leaf into a usable realm. Although with such a crude strengthening, I'm afraid it would be wasted after using it once. But the eternal tree only needs to move once, and it would be enough to suppress all the strong enemies." "Go to hell." Before Wang Lu could finish his words, Zhan Zai's power of thunder had already burst out, which blasted him upside down and heavily hit the tree wall. However, although Zhan Zai's attack was strong, Wang Lu quietly resolved it with his non-phase sword qi, leaving him unscathed. He reached out to smooth the folds of his clothes and lightly said, "Do you think I'm inhumane? Then I might as well tell you one thing. After you hear it, you can judge my humanity." With that, he pulled a wooden stool and sat down. His first sentence made Zhan Zai's whole body shake, and his anger gradually calmed down. Qianghua has come out of the mountain. No matter what kind of analysis and judgment people made about the situation of the five spirits' power struggle, Qianghua's Xingjing sect team was the most dazzling link. Zhan Zai firmly believed that the final opponent of this round would be Wang Lu, which fully affirmed his ability to take advantage of the situation and survival ability. However, the biggest enemy must be Qianghua because in this round her strength had far surpassed that of her peers. It was just that, from the beginning of the fight to the present, Qianghua had always been silent and firmly suppressed by the Master of Golden City. Only Jianglu and Wang Yue siblings, these second-line members, were sent out to contain her. However, second-line members were, after all, second-line members. Soon they were divided and nibbled away by several forces. Xingjing sect team was weakened little by little, and today there was almost only Qianghua left. From a tactical point of view, Qianghua's use of the team was undoubtedly a failure. Not only did she not play a role, she was sacrificed in vain, and even caused herself to be permanently imprisoned by the Master of Golden City. If they didn't know that this was the strongest person in Xingjing sect and even the entire 9 regions, this was simply a funny behavior. Therefore, although no one could guess her layout, everyone firmly believed that Qianghua would make her move sooner or later. And when she made her move, the situation in this world would inevitably undergo major changes. Now, Qianghua finally changed the situation in this world in a way that was beyond everyone's expectation. "Senior brother Zai, can you guess how Qianghua came out of the mountain?" Then, without waiting for Zhan Zai to answer, Wang Lu answered his own question. "She killed the Master of Golden City and usurped the power. Now she is both the Master and the Blood Spirit. The two of them are combined and she is the strongest creature in this world." By the way, after Zhou Mumu left, the power of the Blood Spirit was recovered. Part of it went to the Blood Spirit Temple, and the other part was deposited in the hands of Qianghua. Now she has the power of 3 people and no one can match her. Zhan Zai was shocked, speechless. Speaking of which, her goal from the beginning is the Master of Golden City. And that Supreme King has a keen innate spiritual sense, so he was aware of Qianghua's natural killing intent. Therefore, as soon as Qianghua appeared, he immediately imprisoned her. He used the blood marks in his hand to create the Azura Hall. He is the most powerful person in this world and his means are astonishing. Qianghua with her King Pill stage could not escape. So why don't you take a guess? Since the blood marks need to be sacrificed as a blood sacrifice, who did the Master of Golden City sacrifice? Zhan Zai's thoughts turned sharply as he asked, "Pure Gold Guards." Yes, it seems like Senior Brother Zai has finally recovered his thinking ability. The so-called Pure Gold Guards are actually the children of the Master of Golden City. He sacrificed his 12 children and turned them into blood marks to seal Qianghua so that she can't move. This is because he doesn't have the confidence to kill Qianghua, otherwise he could do it even more ruthlessly. He doesn't care about the 5 Blood Spirit Crown because Golden City is the overlord of this world, and the other 4 forces don't really have the strength to threaten it. But Qianghua is a deadly threat in front of him. Wang Lu said and then shook his head. Unfortunately, the Master of Golden City couldn't really be ruthless. Because the blood sacrifice was his own children, he made a slight adjustment in the ceremony so that the Pure Gold Guards could freely transform between the blood mark and human form. After the crisis in this world, he recalled the 12 Pure Gold Guards. Unfortunately, although this loophole showed his brilliant spell technique, it also buried the foreshadowing of his defeat. In the face of the provocation of the King of Harmony River, his dignity as a Supreme King made him unable to sit still, so he boldly used the power of the Pure Gold Guards. He took out the blood marks of the Azura Hall, and at the same time, he himself replaced the blood marks to personally suppress the Azura Hall. This was a cautious move, but it was exactly what Qianghua wanted. When the blood marks were taken away, the Azura Hall slightly relaxed, and she took advantage of the situation to break through and behead the Master of Golden City when he was caught off guard. The whole process was clean and neat. It was as if the Master of Golden City had delivered himself to the door. With that, a trace of admiration appeared on Wang Lu's face. "So, Senior brother Zai, do you understand what kind of opponent we are facing? From the very beginning, senior sister Cheonghua has been constantly showing weakness, so that our four sides can promote the alliance, forcing the overlord of this world, Golden City, to find it difficult to breathe. When both sides are defeated, she will take advantage of the situation to pick the biggest fruit. She is indeed worthy to be the lead disciple of Xingjing's sect. Her strength and calculation are so wonderful that it makes people speechless. And in the face of such an opponent, senior brother Zai, do you think we have any qualification to preserve our strength? Without waiting for Zhan Zai to think too much, Wang Lu threw out a new counterweight. Think about this problem clearly, senior brother Zai. Senior sister Cheonghua, why did she lock her killing intent on the master of Golden City from the very beginning? No matter how wonderful her layout is, it can't explain this self-contradictory problem from the very beginning. What is the point of her taking great pains to kill a powerhouse who instinctively wants to be her ally? Wang Lu said, and his complexion became more and more serious. At present, there is only one answer that I can think of. While the rest of us are still targeting the 5 blood spirit crown, senior sister Cheonghua has already set her sights on the whole world. What she wants is this world. Therefore, if you continue to be soft-hearted, those 2 children will eventually find it hard to escape death. Moreover, their death will be meaningless. The country that their parents risked their lives to protect will all fall into the hands of others. Senior brother Zai, although they are young, they have already inherited a noble identity, and along with that identity is the obligation to protect this country. I believe that even if they were here, they would not oppose my opinion. After all, they are that man's children, born heroes. As soon as Wang Lu's voice fell, outside the tree hole, 2 tender but decisive voices rang in unison. That's right. We are the sons of the King of Harmony River, we will never be cowards. Upon hearing these 2 voices, Wang Lu finally smiled with satisfaction. And in front of him, Zhan Zai could no longer be angry. Chapter 425. Half an hour later, outside the Eternal Tree, Wang Lu and Lan flew toward Flaming Valley on their flying swords. Are we just going to leave like this? When they left the Eternal Tree, Lan was very confused. Wang Lu funnily asked, what else can I do if I don't go? Leave you to give him a child? It was just a joke, but Lan seriously thought about it. After a long time she asked, why should I give him a child? Wang Lu continued to tease her, in order to leave a descendant for your Gray Mountain. You can't just win the 5 blood spirit crown, but let your Gray Mountain be cut off. Lan said, why him? Because Zhan Zai's breed is excellent, and the key is that he can complement you. His only specialty is his high IQ, while your biggest defect is your low IQ. So that's how it is. Lan somewhat reluctantly accepted Wang Lu's statement. So, do you want me to go back? Forget it. Wang Lu sighed, lamenting that it was indeed interesting to tease a smart person, but teasing a disabled person like Lan was not pleasurable at all. Thus he kept his mouth shut. Leaving the Eternal Tree had its own reason. Zhan Zai and his Eternal Tree strategy was indeed a necessary part, but was it easy to persuade him to carry out the specific implementation? Shaman's final request for an orphan was a life and death test, which was almost impossible for Zhan Zai to cross. Because the most difficult thing for the nerds of 10,000 Arts sect to cross was the test of love. If they didn't get in heat it was fine, but once in heat it was often out of control. In the past there was a senior of 10,000 Arts sect who, in order to win a beauty's smile, took her to the endless sea to see a kind of strange beast called golden phoenix fish. As a result, the strange beast launched an attack and both of them died. The disciples of 10,000 Arts sect had always been indifferent to worldly things. However, when it came to love, their IQ would rapidly degenerate to the point that they were even inferior to Royal Soldier sect. And now Zhan Zai was likely to be in heat without knowing it. Shaman was a member of the fairy race in the forest of the Eternal Tree. She was extremely beautiful, had a charming figure, and had a natural charm, which made her extremely attractive to the opposite sex. Coupled with her innate intelligence, Zhan Zai, after being with her for a long time, inevitably had his heart moved. Of course, with his self-control as the lead disciple, he would not do such a despicable act to ruin his marriage. Previously, he and Shaman had an ambiguous relationship unconsciously. If he noticed the change in his mentality, he would naturally know how to restrain himself. Unfortunately, Shaman was dead. Perhaps Zhan Zai would never find out that he had unknowingly fallen in love with a person, but the influence of love would remain. Perhaps Zhang Zai would regard the two children as important as his own life. It was easier said than done to convince him to sacrifice those two people. After a confrontation in the Eternal Tree, Wang Lu succeeded in making Zhang Zai speechless. However, he was very clear that the other side was not convinced. Therefore, he added more weight and let the two children listen to the dialogue and choose their own future. However, he could only do so much. The last step was to take a risk. Inciting the Boy Scouts was, after all, not a good idea. In particular, Zhang Zai would certainly be angered. If Wang Lu stayed here, not to mention forming an alliance with Zhang Zai, he would immediately have to face the other side's all-out attack. But now Wang Lu retreated in order to advance, letting Zhang Zai face the two raging children alone. With Zhang Zai's ability, it would not be easy for him to coax the children. However, it was hard for Wang Lu to say how effective this move would be. Whether the Eternal Tree would have enough time to rise from the ground and block Qianghua on the battlefield was still unknown. The Eternal Tree is just the last choice. Before that, it will depend on me and senior brother Xiang Liang to support the situation. It's really a bit difficult. In less than half a day, Wang Lu and his follower finally entered the boundary of Flaming Valley. The volcano in the center of Flaming Valley was roaring angrily. The lava surged down from the valley that had been washed for thousands of years. The lava was dark red as if it was a warrior bathed in blood. Flaming Valley had fallen into an extremely unfavorable situation. Not long ago, the King of Harmony River launched a long-distance raid straight to the capital of Golden City. Admittedly, this made the master of Golden City lose face, and the 12 pure gold guards were destroyed in the final blow. However, this legendary raid also released a terrifying opponent, Qianghua Fairy. After Qianghua Fairy came out of seclusion, she only did two things. One was to suppress the entire territory of Golden City. As the new city master, she controlled all the city masters of the sub-cities, thus indirectly controlling the entire country. Her means were more overbearing than the previous one. The second thing was that she personally came out and led the Golden Jade Army to confront the Flaming Valley Army head-on. Within half a day, the barbarian invaders were routed and the foreign enemies were wiped out. Flaming Valley suffered heavy casualties and even suffered serious injuries. In particular, Qianghua's monstrous might on the battlefield directly crushed the inextinguishable morale of the barbarians that they were proud of. Those warriors who regarded death as glory unexpectedly did not dare to be her enemy and directly retreated to the territory of Flaming Valley. Fortunately, after these two things were done, Qianghua temporarily stopped her footsteps. Because Xiang Liang came back just in time. This lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect was the only one who had the capital to face Qianghua head-on. Previously, Wang Lu did not hesitate to painstakingly win the friendship of Xiang Liang for this irreplaceable and powerful force. And Xiang Liang indeed did not disappoint. After he returned to Flaming Valley, he directly found the king of Flaming Valley and forcefully seized the command of the Flaming Valley Guards. He then rushed to the battlefield and fought with Qianghua's Golden Jade Army for a whole day. After paying a heavy price, he finally succeeded in blocking Qianghua. The only pity was that the casualties were indeed too heavy. Senior brother Xiang Liang, you really have a whole new level of respect after 3 days. In the frontline barracks of Flaming Valley, Wang Lu couldn't bear to look straight at the wounded who was wrapped like a dumpling on the sickbed. Unexpectedly, only 3 days have passed and I've only fought with Qianghua once. But the price is so heavy. Huh? The dumpling on the sickbed trembled a bit and issued a hoarse grunt. The sound was full of pain. Obviously, the severity of the injury had been difficult to suppress. Wang Lu was inwardly shocked. He was very clear about Xiang Liang's ability. In the ambush in the valley, more than 10 people from Xingjing sect besieged him, yet he was able to complete the 100 men beheading. From this, Xiang Liang's tyrannical strength could be clearly seen. However, under the hands of Qianghua, he unexpectedly ended up like this. At this time, the breath of the person lying on the sickbed was so weak that it was almost non-existent. He was really only half a step away from death. Where was the prestige of the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect? Qianghua, oh Qianghua, did you, the veteran King Pill, specially come to slaughter the young? Looking at the painful Xiang Liang lying on the sickbed, Wang Lu sighed. Forget it, senior brother Xiang Liang, to be able to fight against King Pill Qianghua in Shudan stage is already not bad. Leave the rest to me. In any case, I'm also the initiator of the alliance, so I can't just shoot my mouth off, right? Otherwise, in the future, I probably can only marry a little Lolita as my wife, which is really not my aesthetic. Just as Wang Lu finished sighing with emotion and turned to leave the ward, a slightly weak voice suddenly sounded behind him. What do you mean by little Lolita? Looking back, Xiang Liang's pale face was right in front of him. After not seeing him for 3 days, Xiang Liang still had the old-fashioned look and sword-like eyes of the lead disciple of Royal Soldier sect. The only difference was that his breath was a lot weaker. However, looking at Xiang Liang's upright posture and his undiminished sharp eyes, anyone would know how stupid it was to underestimate him. Even if he was weak, the lead disciple of Royal Soldier sect still had a strong explosive power. At that time, Qianghua was forced to retreat by Xiang Liang, probably because of this. However, Wang Lu was more concerned about the issue at this time. I heard people say that this is your tent, then the one on the bed is? Xiang Liang glanced at the dumpling and then replied in a deep voice, the warrior who made the greatest contribution in the decisive battle. The medical conditions in Flaming Valley are limited, and my medicinal pills have been used up in the battle. All I can do is to provide him with a better environment as much as possible, but it seems that he won't be able to hold on for long. So that's how it is. It seems like I've watched too many melodramatic dramas recently, which really affects my IQ. Wang Lu smiled helplessly. However, Xiang Liang was still obsessed with the original question. What does little Lolita mean? Nothing. It's not a problem that needs to be concerned about right now. Senior brother Xiang Liang, how do you feel about your fight with senior sister Qianghua? Xiang Liang seriously said, invincible in this world. I relied on the general and soldier unity technique of Royal Soldier sect to gather the power of thousands of Flaming Valley guards to barely fight her. However, after the fight, more than half of the Flaming Valley guards were lost, and I was also seriously injured. It would be difficult for me to fight again in a short time. Is Qianghua injured? Only a minor injury. Although the magical power consumption is great, she is in the King Pill realm, so she should be able to recover in 1 or 2 days. Hearing this, Wang Lu couldn't help but curse. In his mind, he had to overturn the original plan and replan the countermeasures. During the silence, Xiang Liang suddenly asked, what is my aesthetics? Fuck, senior brother Xiang Liang, do you want to jump ship to 10,000 Arts sect? You're so curious that you want to ask about all the insignificant details? Xiang Liang said, really? Then I'll change the question. How are you going to fight with Qianghua? This question is a bit too sharp, let me think about it. Wang Lu said while thinking. But frankly speaking, he really didn't have a good way. In the original plan, Xiang Liang had to at least drag Qianghua for several times longer, so that he would have the confidence to come forward and deal with Qianghua until Zhan Zai finally broke the barrier of love and launched the Eternal Tree. But now, Xiang Liang no longer had the power to fight, and the whole plan chain was completely interrupted. And if he wanted to continue the next chain, it was easier said than done. While he was thinking hard, the ground suddenly trembled. Xiang Liang's complexion changed. He leaned over and put his ear to the ground. After a moment, he softly said, Qianghua is here. Wang Lu could only wryly smile. Senior sister Qianghua was indeed formidable. In addition to her tyrannical strength that was above everyone else, her ability to lay out a plan was also above the standard. She simply calculated his side's weakness, and at the most inappropriate time she launched a strong attack. Well? Xiang Liang stood up, looked at Wang Lu for a moment, and then nodded. The rest is up to you, junior brother Wang Lu. At this time Wang Lu finally had an idea. With a smile on his face, he stepped out of Xiang Liang's tent. Rest assured, it's just a trivial Qianghua, I already have a way. With that, he clenched the mustard seed bag. Chapter 426. Outside the tent, Qianghua very slowly approached. Although her pace was slow, every step she took caused the mountains to shake and the earth to shake. Moreover, her vigorous magic power spread out unscrupulously, like a thick dark cloud shrouding the sky above the camp, making it difficult for people to breathe. At this time, Qianghua was still far away from the army of Flaming Valley. She had not even really appeared, but her imposing manner alone had already frightened the barbarian soldiers of Flaming Valley. The fearless soldiers revealed fear in their eyes. Although the army had not been routed, their fighting spirit had completely collapsed. In this battle, Qianghua single-handedly forced Flaming Valley into a desperate situation without even a single soldier. Wang Lu had to sigh with emotion that the strength of this lead disciple of Shengjing sect was really beyond the others in this world. Not to mention the difference between Jindan stage and Shudan stage was like a natural moat. Even among the several lead disciples of Taoist master of Jindan stage, Qianghua was undoubtedly the strongest. In terms of actual combat, The previously insufferably arrogant Tiger King Lei Zhen on Grand Cloud Mountain might not necessarily be able to withstand 10 moves from the current low-level Jindan stage Cheonghua. Even with his spirit beast, he could only barely fight to a draw. In a head-on fight with such a person, it was really difficult to talk about winning. No matter how fierce Wang Lu's non-phase sword was, he could not win against Cheonghua with a gap of 1 level. Therefore he did not intend to fight the other side head-on. After walking out of the tent, Wang Lu once again checked the hidden items in his mustard seed bag, and then operated his magical power several times to adjust his state to the best. After confirming that there was no mistake, his non-phase immortal heart suddenly turned, and his face immediately raised a bright smile like the sun. The change was so fast that several barbarian soldiers outside the tent, who were trembling under the pressure of Cheonghua, could not help but rub their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. However, a moment later they suddenly felt warm in their heart, and the invisible pressure in the air gradually reduced. The feeling was like a spring breeze, and the source of the spring breeze was the bright smile of Wang Lu. If the distant Cheonghua sect was like the coldness that enveloped the world in the deep winter, then at this time Wang Lu was like a stove that was close at hand. He also walked slowly, facing Cheonghua from a distance. When he walked out of the camp, the snow behind him had melted. It was not a deliberate attack, but just the aftermath of the non-phase immortal heart's full operation. Although he did not intend to confront Cheonghua directly, Wang Lu was about to face this unprecedentedly strong enemy. Therefore Wang Lu still showed all his skills. As soon as he revealed his skills, Xiang Liang in the tent turned his head in surprise. What a powerful formless immortal heart. His realm had far exceeded the Shudan realm, and with such accumulation, if it were anyone else, they would have already tried to break through the king pill. However, Wang Lu had been able to keep his composure. Unfortunately, no matter how powerful a Shudan was, in the end, a Shudan was still a Shudan. It was fine for her to challenge other Taoist Master King Pill, but as the lead disciple of Xingjing sect, how could Cheonghua's accumulation before her breakthrough not be extremely deep? If he could not pass the King Pill, he would not have any chance. However, if he could advance from the Void Core to the King Pill, thinking of this, Xiang Liang suddenly felt a flash of light in his mind. Although he was inexperienced in the ways of the world, he was a rare genius in cultivation. He suddenly thought of a possibility, but he immediately shook his head and rejected it. Breakthrough at the last moment? This was the King Pill. Even if Wang Lu's accumulation was deep enough, coupled with his amazing spirit root qualification, there would be no bottleneck during the breakthrough. But after the breakthrough, he would have to spend a period of time to suppress the King Pill and stabilize his cultivation base. During this period, he would not be able to use his magical power freely, making it impossible for him to fight with others. If Wang Lu wanted to make a breakthrough at the last moment, he should have done it earlier, but now he had no chance. However, Wang Lu's way of doing things had always been unexpected. Let's take this opportunity to see what he was going to use to block Cheonghua. While he was thinking, Wang Lu and Cheonghua finally met. When the two of them met, Cheonghua happened to reach the top of the mountain. She looked down disdainfully with a touch of curiosity in her eyes. Wang Lu stood at the foot of the mountain, looking up at her with a smile on his face. This was the first time they met in this immortal dreamland, but their imposing manner was vaguely comparable. Senior sister Cheonghua, long time no see. Cheonghua smiled. It's indeed been a long time. As the lead disciple of Xingjing sect, Cheonghua was always calm and courteous. However, it was better to use peaceful means before resorting to force. Only when she made her move would people realize how sharp her methods were behind her polite smile. After a brief greeting, Wang Lu went straight to the point. Senior sister Cheonghua, I want to make a deal with you. Cheonghua nodded. I'd like to hear the details. In this 5-blood spirit crown battle, senior sister Cheonghua's strength is far beyond that of her peers. Now victory is already in your grasp. Even if the several of us join forces, it will still be difficult for us to contend against you. Hearing this, Cheonghua was quite surprised. Whether it was the sect's intelligence or her understanding of Wang Lu, he was the kind of person who would never admit defeat. He would definitely fight to the end and seize the last chance to turn the tables. But now he actually said such words? Probably he was laying the groundwork for the real lines. Sure enough, as soon as Wang Lu finished speaking, he changed the topic. However, this is just a game, so what if I win? Xingjing sect is the #1 sect in 9 regions, so we don't lack this bit of merit to consolidate our prestige. However, this trial has a special meaning for me, so I want to make a deal with senior sister. With that, Wang Lu took out a golden seal from his mustard seed bag. Qionghua's beautiful eyes widened as she looked at the seal in Wang Lu's hand. Mysterious Sky's golden seal? Wang Lu said with a smile. Yes, the Mysterious Sky's golden seal can be exchanged for more than 10 million spirit stones in the Mysterious Sky Mansion, which allows you to overdraft your spending and enjoy Mysterious Sky Mansion's high-class VIP treatment as well as various conveniences. Its authority is second only to the Mysterious Sky's Black Seal. At present, the Mysterious Sky Mansion has distributed no more than 3,000 of them in 9 regions. As long as Senior Sister Qianghua is willing to let me win this round, I am willing to offer this Mysterious Sky's golden seal. Qianghua was even more surprised. Junior brother Wang Lu Yu? After a pause as if trying to find the right words, a moment later, Qianghua softly asked, "Are you bribing them?" Wang Lu laughed. Senior Sister Qianghua doesn't know this, but this is not a bribe, but a political contribution. It's in accordance with the law, above board, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Qianghua felt that she somewhat didn't understand. Oh, I know that Senior Sister Qianghua, as the lead disciple of Xingjing sect, has never worried about resources. As long as your cultivation needs it, let alone the Mysterious Sky's golden seal, even more precious resources will be bestowed by the sect. However, in my opinion, what the sect bestowed is just dead money. Because no matter how precious it is, after all, it has to be put under the sun. From the application to the approval to the use, each and every move is known by the sect's budget constraints. I know that Senior Sister Qianghua's conduct is above board and above board. However, everyone needs privacy, and on the path of cultivation, there will always be some expenses that are not known to everyone. This Mysterious Sky's golden seal is worth more than 10 million spirit stones. Moreover, it's a living money. No matter how Senior Sister uses it, you can do whatever you want. Now that Senior Sister Qianghua is a Taoist master of the King Pill, it's time for you to gradually break away from the shackles of the sect and start your own business. I think these 10 million spirit stones will certainly help you in your next step. More than just valuable? 10 million spirit stones? Many of the elders of the 5 super sects may not even have such a net worth. The reason why Wang Lu could have such a huge sum of money was thanks to his several gambling windfalls, which he then wisely invested in the development of his sect. Over the years, the scale of the industry has grown by leaps and bounds, and the dividends have increased year by year. In terms of wealth alone, Wang Lu's family was far richer than many of the elders. Although Qianghua was the lead disciple, she could freely dispose of her own money, which was no more than 1 million spirit stones. Looking at the golden seal in the hands of Wang Lu, Qianghua, who had always been accustomed to controlling the overall situation and suppressing everything, finally felt that she could not grasp the situation. Wang Lu, what exactly did he want to do? Wang Lu struck while the iron was hot. Moreover, this matter is only known by you and me. There is absolutely no risk. Even if the sect later pursues you, Senior Sister, it would be easy for you to shirk it. After all, I have a small reputation in the Wanxian League, and I am accustomed to creating miraculous victories. It's not surprising that Senior Sister Qianghua occasionally lost to me. In the past, 2 of the holy ones of the Western continent were lost in my hands. Oh, I know that a golden seal alone is not enough to show my sincerity, so I will add one more thing. If Senior Sister is willing to help me, I promise to owe you a favor which will be valid forever. Seriously speaking, the value of my Wang Lu's favor is higher than this Mysterious Sky's golden seal. Because now it seems to be just a promise from a peak Shudan stage cultivator, but in the future, when I reach Yuanying and deity stage, the value of this favor is difficult to estimate. Enough. Qianghua lightly interrupted. Enough, no need to say any more. Junior brother Wang Lu, I have seen your surprising ability, and the joke just now was indeed very funny, but I'm not here to listen to your jokes. Show me your real ability. Wang Lu sighed, played with the golden seal in his hand and said, I am very serious, but Senior Sister, you only think that I am joking. It's really a pity. Do you really not want to think about it? Qianghua helplessly shook her head, and then unsheathed her blue sword. If you say it again, it will only make me look down on you. Wang Lu was silent for a while, and then quietly put away the Mysterious Sky's golden seal. The smile on his face sank a little bit. Very well, Senior Sister Qianghua, since you don't want to accept my sincere deal, then we can only meet on the battlefield. But before that, I want to ask you one thing. Qianghua's patience was amazing. She didn't mind that Wang Lu talked too much. She nodded and said, Please speak. Senior Sister, Do you mind if I bully you with numbers? Hua smiled but didn't speak. She just pointed the blue immortal sword in her hand forward. Even if you have thousands of troops and horses, I alone with my sword is enough. Wang Lu smiled and said, very well, since senior sister is so bold, then I won't be polite. Let me introduce you to a friend. I met him when I was exploring the Western continent, and because of some reasons, he came with me to 9 regions. With that, Wang Lu took out a gray ball from his mustard seed bag, and then fiercely crushed it, causing a plume of gray smoke to rise. His name is Faceless One. Chapter 427. Almost as soon as the gray smoke rose, Hua made her move. The deep blue immortal sword, Immortal Dew, in her hand swung down with all her strength, merciless. The powerful primordial spirit made Fairy Hua immediately aware of the crisis. Although the faint gray smoke contained a weak energy, it carried a terrifying demonic power that was enough to move her. It was like an ancient devil that had broken free from its seal. Even though it was weak, it still had an overwhelming advantage in terms of cultivation. Hua was second to none among the lead disciples of the 5 uniques. However, the lead disciples of the 5 uniques were just disciples, and there were countless people who were more powerful than them in 9 regions. Therefore, Hua never overestimated her own ability. When she needed to go all out, she would never hold anything back. However, halfway through the swing of the Immortal Dew sword, Hua's eyes suddenly blurred, and the weight of the immortal sword in her hand suddenly changed. She felt that the sword was not real at all. Knowing that something was wrong, she immediately sealed her 5 senses, sank her primordial spirit, and the king pill in her jade mansion began to spin, and the light shone in all directions. That evil heart devil had unknowingly invaded her, and its speed was so fast that people simply couldn't react. Hua even suspected that Wang Lu's absurd bribery was just a cover for him to release his heart devil. Regarding Wang Lu's killing move, Hua did not dare to take it lightly. She immediately used Xingjing Immortal Method to stabilize her primordial spirit and immortal heart, and then tried to expel it. However, just as Hua finished all this, a sharp laughter sounded in her jade mansion. The devil that invaded her jade mansion was crazily laughing in a special language. Hua's heart turned cold. That language was something that she had learned in Xingjing sect, the common language of the Western continent. And the lines of the devil were, ha ha ha, accept the sanction of Holy Light, Far East Heresy. Western Continent Holy Light Religion Lunatics. More than a year ago, she went on an expedition to the Western Continent with the 9 regions Wanxian League and deeply experienced the fierceness of the local natives. The fanatics of Holy Light religion acted in a radical manner, and in the eyes of the people of 9 regions, they have long been possessed by the devil. However, these fanatics who shouted the sanction of heresy were the madmen among the madmen, the devil without a doubt. The situation suddenly became tricky. Xingjing sect Immortal Method was the supreme method in 9 regions. As the lead disciple of Xingjing sect, Hua was confident that she could come up with a method to restrain any devil in 9 regions. However, the devil of Western Continent was not one of them. Whether the 9 regions' evil suppression immortal method could restrain the devils of the Western Continent, no one could say for sure. However, Hua's immortal heart remained unmoved. So what if she couldn't find a way to restrain it? As the lead disciple of Xingjing sect and the top sword cultivator among her peers, her one sword break 10,000 method ability had long been perfected. Not to mention that the immortal dew sword in her hand could purify all living things, and it was best at suppressing evil and exorcising devils. During her trip to the Western Continent, she didn't deliberately start a massacre, but the number of Western Continent devils that died in her hands was not small. Outside the Jade Mansion, the gray smoke gradually shrouded it and soon wrapped it up. The laughter of Faceless One was faintly discernible outside the Jade Mansion, just like a ghost. The gray smoke filled the air, turning Hua's brilliant Jade Mansion into the netherworld. However, Hua firmly guarded her Jade Mansion. The king pill within the Jade Mansion generated its own magical power, which stood as an equal to the gray smoke. At this point, Hua was slightly relieved. Her reaction was a step faster. She promptly sank her primordial spirit from her purple mansion into the Jade Mansion, protected by the king pill. If her primordial spirit was still suspended outside the Jade Mansion, everything would be over once it was confused by the gray smoke. However, seeing the layers of ghostly shadows outside the Jade Mansion, she was inwardly alarmed. The magical ability of this devil was really amazing. She, the dignified Taoist master of the king pill, was actually easily trapped inside the Jade Mansion, making her unable to exert her magical power. Perhaps this devil was not an ordinary character in the Western continent. She didn't know how Wang Lu brought him back to 9 regions and brought him into the immortal dreamland as a trump card. In terms of rank, perhaps he was even above her. The only weakness was that he looked very weak. Although the gray smoke outside the Jade Mansion blotted out the sky and was endlessly mysterious, it was not very strong. As long as she condensed her magical power and broke through to a certain point, the gray smoke could be dispersed. However, as the magical power dissipated, the gray smoke came back. Upon seeing this, Qianghua immediately operated the King Pill, drawing the flying sword Immortal Dew back into her body. She saw that inside the Jade Mansion, the blue light on the sacrificial sword platform flashed. The Immortal Dew turned from real to virtual and flew into the Jade Mansion from outside Qianghua's body. Along with the appearance of the Immortal Dew, the gray smoke outside the Jade Mansion suddenly retreated about 10 feet, and the aura inside the Jade Mansion also became a lot clearer. This natural exorcism immortal sword was the nemesis of all devils, and now it seemed that the devil of the Western continent would not be an exception. Qianghua's heart became more at ease. Then she used her primordial spirit to move the sword. The Immortal Dew sword slightly pointed outside the Jade Mansion, and the blue light on the tip of the sword condensed into a Jade Dew, which then flew out of the Jade Mansion and fell into the place shrouded in gray smoke. In a split second, a green plant broke through the ground, its branches extending upwards with all its might. Very quickly, it grew to a height of more than 100 feet. Dense branches and leaves grew, and then hundreds of flowers bloomed. Petals fluttered in the air, creating a scene of spring in the ghost domain that was shrouded in gray smoke. It was called Sword Immortal Dew, like a jade bottle held by a Zen monk in the dreamtime. A little bit of immortal dew could revive the dead. Although this flying sword was a sharp object, mainly for killing in Qianghua's hand, it could reverse life and death. Although Faceless One's dead domain was strong, it could not stop the vitality of the Immortal Dew. Qianghua continued to use her primordial spirit to control the Immortal Dew sword. A little bit of sword light, like broken stars, lit up around the Jade Mansion. Each point of light was lush and flourishing. Before long, Qianghua's Jade Mansion was surrounded by a sea of life, and the gray smoke, which symbolized death, was forced to retreat step by step. Qianghua's confidence was blocked. Next, she had to be steady and sure, bit by bit, consolidate her own camp, until the gray smoke was completely removed and the victory was established. However, after the initial formation of the Sea of Flowers, Qianghua was surprised to find that the first batch of blooming flowers began to wither. When the Sea of Flowers multiplied to the extreme, death and withering became unstoppable. Although the gray smoke was temporarily excluded from the Sea of Flowers, it still penetrated into the Sea of Flowers all the time. And the miracle of life that Qianghua evoked with the Immortal Dew still lacked a lasting support. Qianghua was a bit hesitant. Do I have to use the King Pill True Qi? After entering the King Pill realm, the King Pill in the Jade Mansion was an inexhaustible source of power for the cultivator. However, after all, it was not inexhaustible in the true sense. Rashly using the True Qi. And just at this time a change occurred. In front of the Jade Mansion, where the gray smoke was the densest, a ray of light like a sharp sword, pierced through the gray smoke and fell from the sky, shining on the flower tree that began to wither. With the illumination of the light, in a split second, the flower tree regained its vitality. The next moment, more rays of light pierced through the gray smoke and shone on the flower tree. Each beam of light made the flower tree completely rid of the shadow of death, glowing with unprecedented vitality. With the intensive light, the Jade Mansion seemed to be bathed in a sea of light. Witnessing this scene, Qianghua's heart could not help but be shocked. In a trance, her understanding of life and death deepened a level. In particular, the holy light shone on the Immortal Dew flower tree, making it full of vitality, not fearing any death and decay process, which contained a very profound mystery. And this was likely to be an important accumulation for Qianghua to step into the Yuanying stage. However, at the same time, Qianghua also calmly thought, what exactly was this light? Could it be that someone has come to help? However, in the immortal dreamland there were enemies everywhere, so who would lend a helping hand to her? Or, at this time from the boundless light above her head, a soul-stirring, primordial spirit-shaking voice buzzed. Believe in the holy light. Boom. Each of the tens of thousands of beams of light outside the Jade Mansion turned into a sharp sword and directly pierced the Jade Mansion. The originally impregnable defense, under the simultaneous attack of the tens of thousands of sharp swords, violently shook. What a powerful deception. In an instant, Cheonghua's heart was shocked. This covert move was really used to the extreme. The gray smoke that previously blotted out the sky was just a cover, while the real killing intent was actually hidden in the moment of life and death. The real lethality of the tens of thousands of sharp swords was not reflected in the magical power. The sharp swords hurt the heart and the soul. The shaking of the Jade Mansion was not caused by external force, but the instability of her own primordial spirit, which began to tremble. Just now, because of her understanding of life and death, she subconsciously had a trace of recognition of the holy light that aroused the miracle of life. Thus, the opponent immediately took advantage of this and forced her to believe in the holy light. Perhaps this was the real killing move of holy light religion, which was really impossible to guard against. However, as the lead disciple of Shengjing's sect, how could her yearning for the immortal path be so easily shaken? How could a mere holy light be compared with the faith of Shengjing's sect? Cheonghua's primordial spirit burst into a roar, and her immortal heart bloomed with supreme light, which was even more dazzling than the holy light that fell from the sky. At the same time, Cheonghua no longer stubbornly defended herself. Her immortal dew sword and her primordial spirit fused, which then flew out of the Jade Mansion and courageously moved forward. The front was filled with gray smoke, but the immortal dew sword was invincible, piercing through the layers of gray smoke. After an unknown amount of time, perhaps it was just a blink of an eye, or perhaps it was longer, the immortal dew sword rapidly flew through the gray smoke and finally the front suddenly opened up. A Western continent priest in a holy white robe was facing her, and the holy light in his hand was sparkling. The priest's face had no facial features, it was completely blank. However, Cheonghua had no intention to pay attention to this person. She was very clear that this was a rare opportunity. Her immortal dew sword went all out, piercing through the Western continent priest's chest and coming out from his back. However, the sword momentum didn't stop, it flew straight to the boundless horizon. Crash! The invisible barrier was broken. Cheonghua opened her eyes and found that she was still standing on the top of the hill. Wang Lu was still at the foot of the hill, and the gray smoke had yet to disperse. The two looked at each other and everything that happened just now seemed to be an illusion. However, Cheonghua was very clear that all of this was not an illusion. Just now, with her extremely brilliant fighting wisdom, she grasped the fleeting opportunity, which allowed her to escape from the gray smoke. Now that she was clear-minded, it was time to harvest the fruits of victory. After seeing the strength of the opponent, Cheonghua would not be lenient. The strength of the King Pill stage fully broke out. Her feet touched the ground and like a lightning she pounced down the hill, and her immortal dew sword suddenly pierced through Wang Lu's chest. Before the fight, Cheonghua had long heard of the prestige of Wang Lu's non-phase sword. For this so-called #1 defensive swordsmanship in the world, even if she was sure that she would win, she had no intention to confront it head-on. As long as she made full use of the speed advantage of the King Pill stage against the Shudan stage, she could succeed before the opponent could launch his non-phase sword defense. Why would she need to attack the enemy's strong point? Even though the immortal dew sword in her hand had pierced through Wang Lu's chest, Cheonghua was still not at ease. She released the magical power of the King Pill stage until the immortal dew sword permeated Wang Lu's body. Although the immortal dew sword could revitalize one's vitality, under Cheonghua's control, it could also become a deadly poison. No matter how powerful Wang Lu's non-phase method was, once the poison permeated his whole body, he would undoubtedly lose. This fight was finally won. Using the King Pill stage against the Shudan stage, it was a thrilling victory, but in the end, just as she thought of this, a sudden change occurred. Wang Lu, whose whole body was permeated by the immortal dew sword, revealed a strange smile. The next moment, his facial features disappeared without a trace with a bang, revealing a pale and flat face. Chapter 428. Ha! Come and believe in the holy light, heretic lady of 9 regions. The laughter was like a spring thunder, which made Cheonghua's tranquil state of mind tremble. The youth who suddenly lost his facial features melted like a burning candle. His flesh and blood melted into the earth. At the same time, the mountains around him began to twist and deform. Gray smoke surged from the horizon and soon enveloped her field of vision. In the place closest to her, a flowering tree rose from the ground and then seemed to wither under the gray smoke. Everything was exactly the same as what she saw in the Jade Mansion. Just now, her primordial spirit fusion flying sword seemed to have no effect at all, and she was still trapped in the cage of the Jade Mansion. In the cage, Faceless One's laughter once again sounded. It was still far and near like a ghost, However, the light that sprinkled down from the sky was even more magnificent. The flowering trees were attracted by the holy light, and each bunch of flowers turned their head to look at the holy light. The holy light nourishes all things, and all things believe in the holy light. This mysterious transformation between life and death constantly exudes a strange charm for cultivators. The more transcendental one's perception is, the more difficult it is to restrain oneself. However, as long as one's yearning for immortality is slightly shaken, one would be attracted by that light. What a powerful illusion technique! Qianghua inwardly marveled. Everything that she saw in front of her was trying to shake her immortal heart. And as long as her immortal heart was broken, she would immediately fall into the hands of the devil. Although this devil from the Western continent has been infinitely weak because of the long-term seal suppression, but before he was sealed, he was probably one of the most powerful cultivators in the Western continent. The use of power and the grasp of people's heart have reached the point of perfection. Although she was the top cultivator among her peers, in front of this Western continent devil, she was like a young child, whose every move was in the palm of his hand. This was a hopeless battle in which it was difficult to talk about winning. However, the more it was like this, the calmer Qianghua became. She took a deep breath and then operated her primordial spirit to seal off her 5 senses. The opponent's illusion technique was too strong. Under the effect of the illusion, she could not distinguish whether the world around her was real or fake. In this case, her 5 senses would only become a drag. However, as a cultivator of the King Pill sect, she had a perception that went beyond her 5 senses and would never be confused. His line of sight returned to his jade mansion. The diamond-like dazzling jade immortal heart was still stubbornly releasing its own light in the predicament wrapped in holy light, symbolizing Qianghua's unyielding persistence. Immediately after, the young girl began to shake her jade mansion. The King Pill and her primordial spirit slowly shifted and fused with the jade immortal heart. With the gradual formation of the Trinity, the illusion outside the jade mansion began to collapse. Only the most determined and tenacious immortal heart could accommodate the primordial spirit and the King Pill, and only the highest grade of the King Pill could circulate independently in the immortal heart without any stagnation. Only the purest primordial spirit could be freely contained in the immortal heart without being contaminated. Qianghua's method, Tao, and heart had reached an unprecedented high degree of harmony. All the disturbances brought by her body were eliminated, and the distracting thoughts in her primordial spirit also disappeared without a trace. In Qianghua's heart, there was only the tireless pursuit of the immortal path. Therefore, no matter how many means Faceless One used, it was still difficult for him to confuse Qianghua. The illusion outside the jade mansion was like a tree without roots, gradually withering. Qianghua retreated in order to advance, and defended in order to attack. Using the Trinity method, she achieved an unprecedented self-purification. As the jade immortal heart became more and more dazzling, Faceless One's laughter gradually faded. Puff! In the gray smoke, a young man in red and white robe, as if he was hit by a heavy blow, involuntarily spurted out a mouthful of blood. In the filthy blood, there were sparkling diamond-like rays of light. It was just that, such a beautiful thing for the person who vomited blood, was actually a deadly poison. After vomiting blood, Wang Lu suddenly issued a disdainful sneer. Faceless One, are you King good or not? A dignified quasi-sage can't even deal with a King Pill girl? You're not deliberately letting her win, are you? As soon as his voice fell, the expression on his face changed, becoming stiff and void. His mouth then said, "These words are really chilling." She even used the Trinity method. The jade immortal heart can even be directly reflected in the other party's immortal heart, like a highly toxic attack. Your non-phase sword body can't stop it, what else can I do? Even if I am a true sage with your tiny amount of magical power, I can't play any more tricks. The nature is originally incompatible and the total amount is also small. By the way, are you interested in believing in the holy light? If you are willing to convert to the holy light, transform your magical power and primordial spirit into the seed of the holy light, I might be able to do something with it. A vigilant look appeared on Wang Lu's face. If I didn't know that you've been trained by my master to be a loyal dog, I would have turned you into ashes with this suggestion. Then his expression became indifferent again, but his voice was still full of rhythmic changes, which seemed vivid and colorful. That's not appropriate. I have not been trained by anyone, but rather awakened from the bottom of my heart, realizing my true mission. And for my mission I can put down any so-called hatred, not to mention that I am the most loyal executor of Holy Light religion, so I have no personal hatred to speak of. Your so-called mission is to serve my master? Yes, my existence, my everything is to carry out her will. You are her disciple, so she handed me over to you so that I can help you at the critical time. So, at this moment, I will do my best to help you. I really want to know what my master did to you in the past. Wang Lu sincerely sighed with emotion. She showed me the truth. Oh? Is her truth a D cup? Wang Lu, although I understand the intimate relationship between you and her in front of me, you'd better not be disrespectful to her. Otherwise, I will let you have a deep taste of the price of blasphemy. Forget it. I have been her disciple for many years, and I have touched her more than once. I really hate you. But you still have to help me. I want you to quickly take down Qianghua. Otherwise, when she comes back to her senses and kills me, you who are in the possession state, will also die, and your plan to be loyal to the queen will be over. I now think that it might be better for her to get rid of you and let her change her disciple. Well, now that Qianghua is impervious to evil, even a brilliant illusion would be difficult to shake her. Therefore we must change the direction and give up the initial plan of humiliating her. Well, although it's a pity, the reality is more important. So, let's change to the next plan, delay the time and strive to delay the other side. I agree. Although the Trinity is highly pure, its dullness to foreign objects can also bring fatal damage. Faceless Face borrowed Wang Lu's mouth to softly explain, and then she raised her right hand high. A river of holy light flowed out from the palm of her hand, like a gorgeous ribbon. It was just that, the heresy of the ribbon was extremely enlarged, turning into a billowing river. The river flowed upstream from the foot of the mountain, rushing all the way to the top of the mountain, wrapping the jasper flower on the summit. The river of holy light was mighty, rushing forward, but wherever the river passed, the movement of all things became extremely slow. This river was actually created by Faceless One with a very brilliant skill. He used the holy light to simulate the river of time, manipulating time in a small range. Qianghua's self-purification made her impervious to evil, but at the same time she was also highly self-sealed. In this state, although it was difficult to hurt her, it could trap her in a special way. Well, with the washing of the river of history she can't do anything for at least 3 days, but after 3 days, after 3 days, no matter what reaction the eternal tree has, it doesn't matter. Wang Lu sneered, frowned, and then said to himself, next, I have to solve my own problem. Faceless, come and give me a hand. In this mysterious and subtle realm, Qianghua didn't know how much time had passed. The high degree of integration of King Pill, Primordial Spirit, and Immortal Heart was an immortal level method inherited by Xingjing sect from before the Age of Chaos. For thousands of years, only a few people could cultivate it, and all of them were earth-shattering almighty. Today the immortal path had declined, and Xingjing sect was revered as the leader of the Wanxian League. In the sect, only Qianghua could use this method. In the state of integration, Qianghua was impervious to all methods. At the same time, because of the integration of the three forces, each and every move of hers had great power. Unfortunately, Qianghua hadn't been cultivating this method for long, so the three realms were not yet perfect. Therefore, she could only defend but not attack, and it was difficult for her to launch an attack. Otherwise, taking advantage of the disintegration of the illusion and triggering the counterattack from the opposite party, she would then launch a powerful sword strike in the state of integration. Even if Wang Lu's non-phase sword was twice as strong, he would still be defeated without a doubt. However, now that Qianghua had gradually regained the initiative, when the state of integration was over, she still had the absolute advantage. She had already touched the door of the opposite party's illusion, so she would not be confused for the second time. Without the illusion, what could a Shudan stage lead disciple of Spirit Sword sect and a Western continent devil who was struggling at death's door do? However, suddenly Qianghua's immortal heart trembled, and the state of integration of the three nearly disintegrated. Her intuition told her that a huge crisis was about to come, and the sudden burst of warning even shook her immortal heart. What kind of crisis in this world could seriously threaten her? Even the devil of the Western continent just now couldn't do it. Could it be impossible? It shouldn't be possible? Thinking to this, Qianghua simply began to lift the state of integration and began to unseal her 5 senses. When she opened her eyes, the blood-red setting sun surprised her. In her impression, the fight with the Western continent devil would last for at most an hour, and it was not even noon when the fight started, so how could it be in the evening now? However, before she could think about it, the terrifying magical power fluctuation from afar attracted all her attention. Behind the countless mountains, a big tree that blotted out the sky began to sway, causing the whole world to sway with it. Countless roots twisted together, forming a pair of strong and powerful legs that rose from the ground. Then it crashed down, and the waves of water in the lower reaches of Harmony River surged up to the sky. The violent shock seemed to turn the world upside down, and the shock waves were transmitted from thousands of miles away, making people unable to stand steadily. At the same time, rain fell from the sky, which was the water of Harmony River that was stirred up to the sky. When the eternal tree moved, it already had such power. However, why did this ancient silent tree suddenly move? At this time, two tender and angry voices suddenly resounded through the world along with the stretching of the branches and leaves of the eternal tree. Jin Ling Dai. We want to avenge Uncle Zai. Upon hearing these words, Wang Lu finally could not help but laugh. Senior brother Zai, I'm really sorry. The reason why I forced you with my words was not to force those two children to die, but to force you to die, and as a result you really died, ha ha ha. Chapter 429. Wang Lu had never really conspired to take the lives of the two children. The blood sacrifice of one person to create the eternal tree was, from the very beginning, a conspiracy. A conspiracy to force Zhan Zai to his death. Zhan Zai's eternal tree strategy was not wrong. The spell he deduced with his supreme wisdom could indeed connect the sacred leaf to the eternal tree, which could exert an unprecedented terrifying power in this world. Unfortunately, Shaman and a Yi went to the underworld together, completely ruining his entire plan. Without the powerful sacred leaf Shaman, the young successor was far from enough to support the spell. Thus, the only way seemed to be what Wang Lu said, the blood sacrifice of one person to create the other. However, just as Wang Lu said the plan, he was angrily interrupted by Zhan Zai. But on the other hand, if Wang Lu didn't say the plan at that time, what would happen? With Zhan Zai's IQ, could he really not think of this method? As for whether this method would be implemented or not, and whether it was possible for him to harden his heart and hurt the two children, in fact he had to carefully consider it. The two children were entrusted to him by Shaman, which was of great significance. However, from another point of view, who did Shaman and these two children belong to? Was it with Zhan Zai? Seeing these two children who inherited the blood of a Yi, would Zhan Zai smile from ear to ear and regard them as his own? Even if Zhan Zai was slow in emotion, would he really be willing to accept these two big plates? Zhan Zai was not an evil person, but he was also not a saint. He would not easily be moved by the love between a man and a woman. Previously, when he was attracted by Lu Li, it could not be considered as being moved by his true love. However, with Zhan Zai's character, once he was moved by his true love, he would often do extreme things. For him, at the beginning it was just a game, and the important thing was the result. During this period, when he got along with Shaman, this forest fairy made him quietly moved, and he began to try to enjoy the game process. However, when he had high hopes for Shaman, Shaman betrayed his trust. For Zhan Zai, Shaman could be said to have stabbed him in the back. However, for a cultivator of 10,000 arts sect who secretly had feelings for her, the meaning of this injury could only be explained by the countless painful lessons in history. Unfortunately, although Shaman was intelligent all her life, at the last moment of her life, she was confused and ignorant of what she had done. Entrust the two children to Zhan Zai? When Wang Lu found out about this, he immediately sentenced the two children to death. Perhaps Zhan Zai would not act immediately, but the existence of the two children was an eyesore. Zhan Zai would eventually understand that the 5 blood spirits crown was the only thing that mattered to him, and if he wanted to obtain the blood spirit crown, the sacrifice of the two children was essential. Of course, Zhan Zai was not a deranged person, but what if the two children sought death on their own, and their reasons for seeking death were very sufficient? Wang Lu was willing to bet 10 million spirit stones that Zhan Zai would definitely go with the flow and sacrifice the two children in exchange for the 5 blood spirits crown. This was the difference between Zhan Zai and Zhou Mumu. In order to have a tacit understanding with a Yi, in order to fulfill a poignant love, Zhou Mumu did not hesitate to sacrifice herself. However, Zhan Zai was different. The teachings of his sect and his innate temperament determined that he would never be stuck in a quagmire forever. If Shaman was still alive, she might be able to firmly tie Zhan Zai down, but she was already dead. The only factor that could limit Zhan Zai's madness had disappeared. For Wang Lu, the life and death of the two children were not important. He would not deliberately push them into the abyss, but he also would not waste precious time to save their lives. For Wang Lu, the important thing was Zhan Zai's eternal tree strategy. It was one of the most important weapons against Zhonghua, but at the same time, it was also a threat that made Wang Lu deeply apprehensive. Once the eternal tree fell into Zhan Zai's hands, He could really sweep across this world and no one could be his opponent. Therefore Wang Lu had to get rid of Zhan Zai, and at the same time he had to keep the eternal tree. Therefore, a targeted plan came into being. The plan to sacrifice the two children, Zhan Zai would eventually come up with it. However, if this matter was put forward by Wang Lu first, the nature of it would be completely different. Given the relationship between the two of them, Zhan Zai would only subconsciously resist this matter, and when he first heard about it, he would be furious. Next, Wang Lu talked about the plan that should have been deduced by Zhan Zai on his own. Not only was it not a hint, but it also completely strangled the germination in Zhan Zai's heart. Especially when the two children came at the right time to ask for a fight, Zhan Zai was completely suppressed by Wang Lu and could not even speak. However, going too far was as bad as not going far enough. Suppressing Zhan Zai so miserably would only make the seed of rebellion grow crazily. Similarly, the timely appearance of the two children was like a stroke of genius, which directly pulled them back from the abyss of death. After making such a scene in front of Wang Lu, no matter what, Zhan Zai would not just watch them die. On the contrary, if he could break Wang Lu's plan, Zhan Zai would regard it as a victory instead. However, how could he protect the two children and make Wang Lu's vicious plan fail? This was the problem left to Zhan Zai, and there was indeed another way to launch the eternal tree without the blood sacrifice. That was, Zhan Zai himself played the role of the sacred leaf. As for whether his wood spirit body could overstep its boundaries and play the role of the master. With the 10,000 methods comprehension, as long as he was willing to pay the price, there was nothing that could not be done. However, using the 10,000 methods comprehension to simulate the sacred leaf was, after all, a heaven-defying act. Especially when the target was the eternal tree, such a divine object. Zhan Zai was bound to pay a heavy price, and it was very likely that he would fall on the spot. In Xuanxian's dreamland he still had life-saving props, but the fate of being expelled was inevitable. From a rational point of view, Zhan Zai simply could not accept this price. He was not here to do volunteer work. To launch the eternal tree to defeat Golden City and then let Wang Lu enjoy the fruits of his labor, why should he? Now the answer was revealed. Based on the previous words of Wang Lu, he was forced to die. Wang Lu didn't tell anyone about this trick, nor did he intend to share it with anyone. In fact, after Zhan Zai was misled by Wang Lu, until he used the 10,000 methods comprehension to simulate the existence of the sacred leaf to communicate with the eternal tree, his magical power was exhausted, his primordial spirit atrophied, and he was forcibly expelled from the immortal dreamland. He didn't realize that his wisdom was actually deceived and he had already gone astray. Of course, perhaps he had already realized it, but he didn't care. When he finally left the stage, Zhan Zai wore a triumphant smile. Wang Lu, in the end, I have not become a chess piece on your chessboard, nor have I lost my humanity. The most important thing is, I have gotten what I want in this trial, and the harvest will not lose to any of you. You can have the 5 blood spirits crown. I hope that your utilitarianism can bless you to always move forward. When Zhan Zai left the stage, perhaps no one in this world could understand the inside story, except for one person. Oh, what a beautiful trick. The smile on Wang Lu's face suddenly turned cold, but his tone was quite playful. It's very much like my style when I preached in Holy Light religion. Wang Lu clicked his tongue and said, originally I was quite proud of something, but because of your comment, it immediately fell. Faceless One said, although I hate you, I recognize your ability. There are only 2 things in this world that are most important. One is hard power, and the other is the ability to play with people's hearts. It seems that you have mastered the latter ability. Wang Lu disapprovingly sneered. What kind of skill is there in playing with an otaku? When one day my master can find her moral integrity, that would be a great achievement. But in any case, the timely appearance of the eternal tree has finally solved the problem. Let's see how senior sister Qianghua deals with it. This eternal tree has infinite energy. If it is properly controlled, it can be comparable to the holy ones of the Western continent. Unfortunately, no one in this world can have this cultivation base. Faceless One lightly commented, especially for 2 young children to control the eternal tree, I'm afraid it would be difficult to preserve its power. But it's more than enough to crush a king pill cultivator. I'm really looking forward to it. Senior sister Qianghua, how are you going to break my game? The same question also emerged in the mind of Qianghua. After awakening his 5 senses and opening his eyes, he saw a towering divine tree rising from the ground in the truest sense of the word. The hostility that assaulted his face was like a tidal wave, causing his heart to tremble. Such a divine thing had far exceeded the scope of this world. This ring limited the cultivation base of a cultivator to the king pill level. She relied on the secret method of Xingjing sect to quickly restore her king pill level after entering this world, which allowed her to occupy the absolute advantage. However, this eternal tree's level was far beyond Yuanying's stage. If it was in perfect condition, let alone Qianghua, even the elders of Xingjing sect might not be able to match it. Even if it was only the two children who controlled the eternal tree, it would be difficult for them to display even 1/10 of its power. Even if she had the ability to move mountains and fill the sea, how could she deal with the eternal tree, which was much bigger than any mountain or river in this world? So, how could she break this barrier? The Trinity secret method was indeed powerful, but it was not enough for her to contend against the eternal tree. Moreover, the effectiveness of the secret method was limited and could not be maintained for a long time. In this state, although her power was raised to the peak and all kinds of evil could not invade her, the king pill also lost its endless good fortune ability, and there was a possibility that her magical power would dry up. If even this secret method could not work, then there was only the last choice. Qianghua's temperament was decisive. After thinking about this, she made a decision. The girl took a deep breath and placed the immortal dew sword horizontally in front of her chest. Her right hand held the hilt while her left hand gently stroked the sword. At the same time, inside her jade mansion on the sacrificial sword platform, a blue flying sword slowly floated up, echoing with the sword outside. Then, a clear spring flowed down from the sacrificial sword platform, and the source of the spring was a freehand landscape painting. This painting in the jade mansion originally seemed to be just an ornament, but at this time, from the mountains and rivers in the painting, a clear spring flowed out and washed the immortal dew sword. The immortal dew was pure and free of dirt, so why would it need to be washed? However, under the flow of the clear spring, the two words immortal dew on the sword were washed away little by little. Then two swift and fierce handwriting emerged. Kill immortal. Chapter 430. When the two words immortal dew turned into kill immortal, it was as if an invisible force was suddenly released. Between heaven and earth, the spiritual energy went berserk and the wind and clouds changed. The whistling wind scuttled between the mountains, the rolling dark clouds gathered and dispersed from the horizon, and the thunder snakes rolled in the clouds. Qianghua quietly wielded the kill immortal sword. Her heart was like an ancient well without any ripples, without sorrow or joy. The sword chi of the kill immortal sword wrapped around her body, making it impossible for any external force to invade her, let alone disturb her state of mind. Kill immortal sword was one of the most famous immortal swords in the 9 regions before the Age of Chaos. It was a veritable immortal treasure, and even the immortals of the upper realm could not face it head-on. It was just that, with the passage of time, the immortal chi of the kill immortal sword had long dissipated, leaving only a sword embryo, which was like a dried-up corpse, and its magical power was completely lost. Thousands of years ago the Xingjing sect found this sword by chance, but they could not use it freely. Qianghua obtained the kill immortal sword from the hands of her sect elder, and she kept it close to her body, refining it day and night. Finally, when she broke through the king pill, she integrated the kill immortal sword into the sacrificial altar in her jade mansion, using her infinite potential to help it restore its vitality, turning it into the basic form of immortal dew. Although it was far from its peak, it was still a valuable spiritual treasure. At this time, Qianghua once again picked up the edge of the kill immortal sword. In her current stage, she could not freely use the power of the kill immortal sword. She could only release the sword momentum, which was a taboo of a sword cultivator. The sword should be light and agile, how could it be reduced to a rough chopping knife? However, at this moment, Qianghua really did not need any precise control. Because the target was too big, even if she wanted to miss, it would be very difficult, wouldn't it? With a chuckle, Qianghua lifted the last bit of restraint. The landscape painting in the Jade Mansion was once again attached to the wall, but the meaning of the landscape had disappeared. The blue flying sword was still on the sacrificial altar. It was just that, the sacrificial altar, which was originally enough to carry the flying sword, was now slightly shaking, unable to bear the burden. Because the immortal dew had finally turned into the kill immortal sword, the agile flying sword seemed to hide a whole world, a world of raging waves. This immortal slaughtering sword was her last trump card in this world. It did not matter if one was the descendant of the Emperor of War, invincible in battle, the 10,000 arts mastery, the thunder battle physique, or even the supreme god or the Vajra indestructible. Under the immortal slaying sword, all of them were not worth mentioning. She had cultivated for 20 years, and this immortal culling sword had accompanied her for 20 years. This was the first time it had revealed its edge. Even when she achieved the king pill, her mana was perfected, and her mind was at its most unrestrained. She had never thought of releasing the immortal slaying sword. Because Cheonghua knew very well that this long wait was all for the moment of harvest. Now it was time to reap the harvest. Cheonghua washed away the immortal dew and washed away the immortal slaying. The process was only a short moment, but it also seemed extremely long. When the kill immortal sword appeared, the time in this world seemed to have stagnated. The eternal tree had just taken a step in the distance, crossing more than 10 mountains. Its thick legs made of roots had not yet landed, but it made people feel that it could no longer lift the earth. Because the immortal culling sword had attacked. Cheonghua's movements were very elegant and light. The famous immortal sword was like a bunch of willow twigs, dancing along with the girl's forearm, drawing a casual arc. This was not because Cheonghua was being lenient, but, with her current cultivation base, this was the limit of what she could do. The kill immortal sword seemed light, and at this time, there were still more than 10 seals left behind by Hichu Daoren. However, for a cultivator of the king pill, it was still too heavy. Cheonghua felt like she was holding the whole world in her hands, and even if she tried her best, she could only gently wave it. Because it was too difficult to control the immortal sword, the direction of the wave was even a bit out of place. Although the eternal tree was a big target because it was still far away, the sword light of the flying sword seemed to be a bit off and did not affect the eternal tree. For Fairy Cheonghua, this was an almost unimaginable mistake. However, people soon realized that it had nothing to do with a mistake. As the kill immortal sword swept across, a clear crack was left in the air. The crack was narrow and surged with a swaying blood-colored light. It looked like a crack had been cut in space. However, the next moment the red light from the crack gushed out. Like a dam bursting, it instantly submerged the hilltop in front of Cheonghua. Moreover, it rapidly expanded and soon, it continued to spread along the mountains and rivers. Wherever the red light passed, not even a blade of grass grew, and the vitality was cut off. Moreover, every bit of death aura made the red light stronger and soon, it spread to a jaw-dropping situation. That's right, the target was so big that even if she could not control the kill immortal sword, so what? Because Cheonghua's goal was the whole world. The kill immortal sword was an ancient immortal sword, and its killing power and magical ability were far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Even though it was separated from the heavy seals of Hichu Daoren, in the hands of Cheonghua, it still shone with incredible power. Using the King Pill stage combined with the 3-in-1 secret method, she poured the authoritative divine power of the Master of Golden City, the power of Metal Spirit and Water Spirit into the Kill Immortal Sword as a sacrificial offering in the Temple of Massacre. And the ancient killing object summoned by the Kill Immortal Sword was enough to threaten this small world. Because this was, after all, not a complete world. It was just an immortal dreamland formed by the group of immortal tombs that connected the Feng Shui line of 9 regions. Although Cheonghua could not break the world with one sword, she could break the dream with one sword. The red light gushed out from the crack and greedily spread to every corner of the world, setting off a monstrous killing. And each killing would make the red light more powerful, like the spread of a plague, unstoppable. If this was an independent and perfect world, facing this kind of crisis of extinction, there would naturally be a vision from the sky to resolve the crisis. For example, the heavenly tribulation in 9 regions was a means to balance the world. However, this immortal dreamland was still one step away from reality, so it was unable to quell the crisis. It could only let the red light spread and continue to disintegrate the world with killing. As for the eternal tree? At the moment when the red light lit up, when the whole world was placed under the kill immortal sword by Cheonghua, the eternal tree was no longer in her eyes. At the same time, when the kill immortal sword disintegrated the world, the eternal tree did not do anything. Previously, it lifted its foot high as if to flatten all the enemies that blocked its way. However, that foot never fell. It just hung there for a long time. No matter how the 2 angry children urged it, the eternal tree refused to move even half a step. Because the eternal tree had no time to take care of itself. In a small world where the most powerful being was only on the level of King Pill, a divine tree that was so powerful that it was close to a Supreme of Unity stage was itself extremely unreasonable. Behind this power there must be a weakness. And Cheonghua happened to understand this weakness. The eternal tree was the foundation of this world. Its strength came from the supply of the whole world. Thus, when the world encountered a crisis, it would also bear the brunt of the feedback. This strike to break the world happened to be a fatal blow for the eternal tree. Countless charred scars suddenly appeared on the thick tree trunk. The coarse bark fell off one by one, and the biggest pieces were as big as small mountains. When they fell to the ground, the earth shook and the mountains shook. Looking up, the crown of the eternal tree, which once blotted out the sky and was hidden above the clouds, began to shrink rapidly. The withered leaves poured down like a torrential rain, and the thin branches at the end of the crown quickly scorched until they turned into gray powder that dissipated with the wind. In the eternal tree, the hundreds of millions of creatures felt their hearts tremble at the same time, which was followed by endless panic. They had lived in the eternal tree for generations and built their own city in the vast trunk of the eternal tree. The eternal tree also sheltered them from the wind and rain, and provided them with rich resources. Even when the sacred leaf urged the divine tree to rise from the ground, the city in the tree remained motionless. This was the protection of the divine tree. But now, people suddenly found that the protection of the divine tree had disappeared. Above their heads was the torrential rain of withered leaves, and their ears were blown by the strong wind at the high altitude, which made their skin and flesh hurt. Their feet trembled faintly and their footing became unstable. The next moment, the sky fell and the earth shook. On the eternal tree, a thick branch broke from the middle, and at the same time, a city also broke from the center. Half of the city that leaned towards the treetop fell with the branch, and thousands of creatures fell into the abyss of death in shock and fear. Before they landed, a red wave rose and swallowed the half of the branch. The cries of thousands of creatures stopped abruptly, leaving behind a deeper fear that spread in this world. This world was finished. It was hard to imagine that a world with hundreds of millions of creatures was killed by Cheonghua's sword. However, from another point of view, in the mortal world, a strong man could also die from a small wound infection. For this imperfect world, the kill immortal sword was not only an infection, but also a highly toxic poison. The red wave surged, and the energy of the slaughter seemed to be loose, but it actually contained spirituality. After expanding to an uncontrollable extent, it specifically targeted the strong of this world and attacked as a group. Xiang Liang and his sovereign, the king of flaming flames, disappeared in the red wave. After the battle with Cheonghua, Xiang Liang was already at a low point. The king of flaming flames was irritable and reckless, and the abuse of blood marks could no longer heal him. Therefore, in the face of Cheonghua's world-breaking attack, Xiang Liang silently chose to leave after doing everything he could. In addition, Harmony River was also the focus of the red wave. This country that a Yi had sheltered from the wind and rain for many years finally could not escape the doom of defeat. The clear river was stained with blood-red filth, and all the vitality was obliterated in the filth. The kill immortal sword raged for 3 days. 3 days later, the world was quiet and the vitality was obliterated. Cheonghua nodded lightly and put away the kill immortal sword. With the return of the kill immortal sword to the sword altar in the Jade Mansion, the red wave that spread throughout the whole world also converged. Compared to the beginning, this killing force had expanded by many times. The hundreds of millions of creatures in this world had all turned into nourishment for the kill immortal sword. And this was the fundamental purpose of Cheonghua. 5 blood spirit crown? Compared to what she got in front of her, it was too small. As the lead disciple of Xingjing sect, what kind of treasure could Cheonghua not get? What kind of method could she not cultivate? In addition to the ticket to enter the next ring, she actually did not care about the reward given by the immortal dreamland. If she wanted it, she could take it herself. Of course, this world-breaking strike was actually quite difficult for her to use. As a sacrifice to launch the kill immortal sword, she offered the throne of Golden City as well as the power of metal and water spirit, and only then did she barely manage to draw out the ancient killing object. Fortunately, even she herself was implicated in it. According to the original plan, it was best to occupy the throne of the 3 forces before she could safely launch the kill immortal sword. However, in the face of Wang Lu's pressure, Cheonghua had to take the risk. Fortunately, in the end, everything returned to the right track. In this ring she had achieved a satisfactory result. With an imperceptible smile, Cheonghua was ready to leave. She didn't even care about the 5 blood spirit crown anymore. She had obliterated the vitality of this world, so it was uncertain whether the blood spirit temple still existed or not. However, at this time, a familiar voice sounded behind her, which made her heart suddenly shocked. "Senior Sister Cheonghua, don't be in such a hurry to leave." Turning around, Wang Lu's smile was brilliant. And in his clear eyes, a perfectly round king pill was spinning. Chapter 431. King Pill? Seeing Wang Lu, Cheonghua looked very surprised. It was not surprising that Wang Lu could survive the kill immortal sword. Wang Lu's survivability was above any cultivator of the same level. However, even according to the most optimistic expectation, Wang Lu should have been seriously injured and on the verge of death after the kill immortal sword's world-breaking attack. But now, not only was he unscathed, he even advanced to the king pill and stood on the same line as her. Was it possible to make a breakthrough in the middle of a battle? In theory, it was impossible. After the foundation stage, every breakthrough meant a huge change from the body to the primordial spirit, and it would take a long time to adapt to this change. Especially when it came to the king pill, if one's qualification was slightly poor, they would have to adjust their breathing for several months in advance, and with the help of array pills, they would have to go through the deconstruction of the Jade Mansion, the condensation of the primordial spirit, and many other hurdles before they could finally achieve the king pill. The process might take up to a month, and the shortest would be 4 or 5 days. During this period there must be no external interference, otherwise, it would all be in vain. Not to mention reaching the foundation establishment stage before entering the immortal dreamland. Even if one was in the Jindan stage before entering the immortal dreamland, after being suppressed to the peak Shudan stage by the secret method, it would be extremely difficult to return to the Jindan stage. Otherwise, she would not be the only one in the King Pill realm in this round. In theory, it was impossible for Wang Lu to jump from the Shudan stage to the King Pill realm in a short period of time. However, theory was theory. Wang Lu never followed common sense. Before entering this round, Qianghua had expected that she might encounter such a situation. Therefore she was fully prepared. In the face of the newly advanced King Pill realm Wang Lu, whose magical power was like a surging sea, Qianghua decisively made her own decision. I give up. Wang Lu was slightly surprised, but his smile did not diminish. However, he could not suppress his confusion. Senior sister Qianghua, are you teasing me? Qianghua calmly said, you and I are both in the lower grade King Pill realm. Our aptitudes are similar and our cultivation techniques are equally good. Our strength should be about the same. Comparatively speaking, my magic weapon is stronger, but I can't use it now. After using the immortal slaying sword, my King Pill source is damaged, and it's difficult for my magic power to recover. I'm only at half of my peak. Whether it's a protracted battle or an instantaneous explosion, I'm no longer as good as you. If I continue to fight, I'll definitely lose, so I gave up. Qianghua also said, this world has already been extinguished by the kill immortal sword, but I can feel that the power of the 5 spirits still exists, and the blood spirit temple has not disappeared. Therefore after I leave, you can still be the victor and obtain the 5 blood spirit crown. In this way, everyone will be happy, and you and I will not have to waste time in a meaningless fight. Even if you're the new King Pill and want to prove that you're above me, it doesn't make sense for you to win against me in my incomplete state. Therefore it's better to leave the outcome for later. Judging from the situation in this trial, there are still many opportunities for us to meet in the future. I'm also looking forward to our next meeting. With that, Qianghua solemnly asked, Junior brother Wang Lu, what do you think? Wang Lu sighed. Senior sister Qianghua, I've always respected you, the lead disciple of Xingjing's sect. Among the lead disciples of the 5 uniques, I always thought that only you can really compete with me. For a long time in the future, you will be my important opponent. Listening to Wang Lu's words, Qianghua was somewhat surprised. However, Wang Lu immediately changed the topic. However, respect is mutual. Since you insist on treating me like a fool, I can only treat you in the same way. With that, Wang Lu's expression changed again, and his eyebrows suddenly became arrogant. Obediently cut off one of your arms, kneel down and apologize, then I'll let you go. Upon hearing this, Qianghua was stunned. This, Wang Lu frowned. Don't you understand? This is a small vernacular language designed for people like you who don't like to use your brain. Listening to it, you should feel intimate like it's your mother tongue. The sarcasm in his words was not concealed, and at the same time, a fierce murderous aura pierced forward like a sharp sword. Qianghua sensed the murderous intent, and the King Pill in her jade mansion suddenly trembled. She frowned and finally confirmed, Junior brother Wang Lu, do you really want to have this kind of senseless fight with me? Senseless fight? Ha, that's not what you said when you exterminated hundreds of millions of creatures with your sword. Qianghua slightly understood. So this is what you're obsessed with? Junior brother, you don't know this, but this world is not as simple as you think it. Words are useless. Wang Lu roared, which caused the surrounding area to tremble. Qianghua's complexion changed, because she found out that the place where she was located was unexpectedly sealed off. The space around her was suppressed by a powerful and heavy energy, like stagnant water, unable to move even the slightest bit. Non-phase sword defense? Wang Lu's 3-feet sword defense was well known for a long time. It could be called as an invincible barrier in the same stage. Even a powerhouse who was a stage higher than him might not be able to break it easily. However, when Wang Lu advanced to the King Pill realm, this non-phase sword defense impressively went a step further, reaching a more mysterious state. If it was a normal time, Qianghua might be interested in exploring the mystery, but at this time her heart sank. The space was suppressed by the non-phase sword qi, which rendered the prop she used to get out of this world ineffective. It was tantamount to her being trapped here. She had to fight with Wang Lu to determine the winner and loser, summon the 5 spirits into one, and then summon the 5 blood spirit crown. And right now she really didn't want to face the imposing Wang Lu. However, the newly advanced King Pill was actually able to suppress the space within 100 feet with his sword qi. It was probably because the Kill Immortal sword had swept through this world, causing the space to become deathly still. She reaped what she sowed. However, at this point it was useless to say more. Wang Lu had already made his move, and the sword intent was decisive. Qianghua had no choice. 2 emerald green jade daggers jumped out from the sacrificial altar, and the sword body was projected in the palm of the girl's hand. The sword qi was dense and agile. It was a pair of rare treasured swords. Coming from Xingjing sect, Qianghua's magical treasures were enough to overwhelm others. In addition to the most important Kill Immortal sword, she had as many spare weapons as she wanted. Each of them was not low in rank, and each of them had magical abilities. If one really thought that Qianghua's strength would be greatly reduced after losing her main weapon, then that would be a big mistake. Qianghua crossed the pair of swords in front of her chest and cautiously observed Wang Lu. The newly advanced King Pill was an earth-shaking change for any cultivator. Wang Lu was already powerful, but at this time, it was even more unfathomable. However, non-phase method had always been good at defense and bad at offense, so she didn't have to be in a hurry. Just as she thought of this, a golden light suddenly flashed in front of her. Wang Lu unexpectedly thrust his sword forward with an indomitable sword momentum. Feeling the sharp offensive of this sword, Qianghua was startled. Could it be that the big heart demon oath that troubled Wang Lu had been lifted along with the achievement of the King Pill? Thus, she slightly raised the 2 swords in her hands ready to parry. The next moment, the 3 swords collided. Qianghua felt an incredible force coming from her hands. The 2 emerald green jade daggers could no longer be held stably and flew out of her hands. Even her jade mansion and King Pill fiercely trembled. Nameless sword. Qianghua softly said to herself, and then looked at the sword of Mount Kuan that was suspended in front of her. The girl smiled. Congratulations, you win. The duel between the 2 lead disciples was decided in just 1 round. Under Wang Lu's sword, Qianghua, who was in poor condition, almost had no resistance. Are you satisfied? Qianghua lightly said. The lead disciple of Spirit Sword sect defeated the lead disciple of Xingjing sect. After this round is over, you can step on me to further your reputation. Is this what you want? Wang Lu sneered. Qianghua then said, in short, can I go now? After a while, seeing that Wang Lu didn't have the intention to move the sword of Mount Kuan away, and the space around her was still firmly locked, Qianghua asked, or are you going to kill me here? Wang Lu laughed again. Kill the lead disciple of Xingjing sect? And then cause an uproar, and from then on, the 9 regions will no longer be peaceful? With that, Wang Lu put down the sword in his hand. Qianghua nodded. Yes, that's why I said that this fight is actually meaningless. I have already admitted defeat. With that, Qianghua was ready to leave, but she found that the space was still locked. Is there anything else? Of course there is. Wang Lu sneered. Originally, I was going to explain it to you in detail, but in view of your level of intelligence, I'd better change it to a more direct way. As soon as his voice fell, a strong and powerful punch solidly hit Qianghua's face. This punch came so fast that it seemed to be even faster than the sword light. Qianghua was caught off guard and was sent flying backward. Only after crashing into 2 mountain peaks did she stop. However, before she could stand up, she saw that Wang Lu was already standing in front of her. Boom. The second punch followed closely, sinking her deep into the mountain rocks and tens of meters deep into the ground. Qianghua only felt that her face was hot, and then blood flowed out. However, the pain in her body was not worth mentioning. What really made her angry was the humiliation in her heart. Wang Lu, don't get me wrong, I'm not interested in humiliating you at the moment. In the deep pit, Wang Lu stepped on Xionghua's feet so that she could not get up, and then lightly said, "I hit you because of my respect for you in the past. You're a bit possessed now, so I have to wake you up a bit." Xionghua sneered. "Possessed? Are you still clinging to my kill immortal sword? I didn't know that the lead disciple of Spirit Sword sect has such a benevolent mind. It's just a mere immortal dreamland. Moreover, do you know what the background of this ring is?" Wang Lu said, "I didn't know at first, but now, even if senior brother Xiang Liang is slow, I'm afraid he can also see it." With that, Wang Lu raised his head and looked up along the hole that was created by his heavy punch. Outside the hole, the blood-colored sky seemed as if it could collapse at any time. Looking from the hole, it looked like an abyss. After the world-breaking blow of the Kill Immortal Sword, hundreds of millions of creatures in this world died. There were only a few survivors. Some of them were sheltered by Wang Lu's non-phase sword defense during the Great Apocalypse, and some of them were fish that escaped the net. However, no matter which creature it was, they all had very obvious characteristics. It was a characteristic that any cultivator of 9 regions with some experience would never forget. And these characteristics had never appeared before. The Great Apocalypse of the Kill Immortal Sword not only annihilated the life force, but also broke the huge confusion spell of this world so that many things showed their original appearance. Before this, among the several lead disciples who entered this level, perhaps only Qianghua had accidentally seen the truth. While thinking, Wang Lu sighed and revealed the answer, "This is the demon world, right?" Chapter 432. Clatter Clatter. While Wang Lu and Qianghua were talking, the sound of gravel rolling came from the entrance of the cave, and a tall, heavily armored woman slowly walked in. Through the glimmer of light from the entrance of the cave, one could vaguely see the clothes of the person. The texture of the armor showed her identity as the master of the Grey Mountain Lawn. However, when the woman approached, one could see that her skin was red, her long hair was like blood, her full lips had 2 sharp teeth protruding out, and behind her was a long tail that was slowly swaying. No matter how one looked at her, she was not that persistent and slow human girl. She was clearly the natural disaster that once wreaked havoc in the 9 regions, the demon race. According to the rumor, the demon race was tyrannical in nature and regarded the creatures of the 9 regions as their irreconcilable enemy. During the Great War of Immortals and Demons, the people of the 9 regions were plunged into misery and suffering. Nearly half of the cultivators who participated in the war were killed, and a large number of sects that had just recovered from the Age of Chaos were wiped out. After that, for thousands of years, although the demon race as a whole was silent, there were still some fish that slipped through the net and crossed the boundary of space to come to the 9 regions, causing various crises. If there was any common enemy in the 9 regions for thousands of years, it was none other than the demon race. Even the predecessor of the Wuxia League was established to fight against the demon race. For the cultivators of the Wuxia League, no matter how big the hatred between them was, if they saw the demon race they must join forces to fight against them. This was the iron rule. However, when Lan approached, Wang Lu just looked back and smiled at her, without showing any hostility. Seeing this, Qianghua finally could not help but change her countenance. Wang Lu said with a sarcastic smile, "As you said, senior sister, this is just an immortal dream land. Even if I marry a wife and have children here, so what? You can swing your sword and break the world, but I can't hook up with a girl? This is not something that can be taken as a joke." Qianghua sternly said, "I'm not joking with you, so I'll have to trouble you to bear with it. Teacher Wang's small classroom is about to start." Boom. As soon as his voice fell, Wang Lu's heavy fist also landed on Qianghua's face. The physical pain was not that intense. Although he didn't know how Wang Lu got rid of the big heart demon oath and went all out, it seemed like the disadvantage of his non-phase method not being good at offense had not changed. With his newly advanced King Pill, he could only cause some superficial wounds even with his magical power overflowing. However, the real damage was this unscrupulous humiliation. When cultivators fought, most of the time they would stop at a certain point. There were a few people who had enmity with each other, and if they attacked with more force, they would make their opponent pay a price before stopping. Only when there was absolutely no way to live under the same sky as them would they attack to take someone's life. But what Wang Lu was doing now was worse than killing someone. A scholar prefers death to humiliation. This was not just empty words. For the chief disciple of the 5 uniques of the Wuxia League, every action was no longer his own business. Everything was related to the glory of the sect. In the fight with Wang Lu, Qianghua could be defeated because she paid a heavy price to use the Kill Immortal sword. Although she was defeated, it was still a glorious defeat, while Wang Lu had an unfair advantage. However, this face-slapping humiliation could no longer be washed away by the previous reason. Qianghua had been cultivating for so many years, but she had never been humiliated like this. If she wanted to wash away this humiliation, she could only. Senior Sister Qianghua, I advise you not to do stupid things. I can't give you the opportunity to die together with me. When Qianghua made the decision in her heart and her jade mansion slightly trembled, Wang Lu suddenly stopped and leaned to the side, letting Lan come forward. Seeing this demon race girl, Qianghua couldn't help but frown, because this heavily armored girl, no matter how she looked at it, felt strange. There was a strong sense of incongruity, as if this body was a completely different person. Oh, you're quite sharp, Lan faintly said. Her expression was as cold as ice, and this coldness immediately made Qianghua recognize her identity. Faceless? Wang Lu said, yes, my gold medal assistant, Faceless. As long as he is here, don't even think about skipping class. With that, another heavy punch landed on Qianghua's face. Her jade-white cheeks slightly swelled and a bruise overflowed. At the same time, Faceless, who was attached to Lan's body, stretched out her tail and stabbed Qianghua's forehead. All of a sudden, a feeling of numbness spread all over her body and spread from her body to her jade mansion and primordial spirit. Qianghua felt that the king pill in her jade mansion stagnated, unexpectedly not listening to her command. Her primordial spirit was also blinded by the devil qi, becoming turbid and unclear. In such a state, even if she wanted to die together with him, she couldn't. The burden of the Kill Immortal sword on her was a bit heavier than expected. Unexpectedly, she couldn't even resist a trivial poison. This is not a trivial poison. Faceless seemed to have anticipated Qianghua's thoughts and lightly explained, the physical structure of this race is very powerful. The tip of their tail can produce an astonishing poisonous substance. Not to mention that you're not in a good state right now, even if you're at your peak. If you're unguarded and stung, you can only lie on the ground and be at the mercy of others. Qianghua's heart was anxious and shocked. As the lead disciple of Xingjing sect, she traveled all year round to gain experiential learning, so how could she not guard against poison? Her body was planted with Qiongyu branch, which could purify all kinds of poison. In addition, she also cultivated several body protection methods, so no matter how powerful the poison was, it was impossible for it to penetrate into her body without being noticed, unless she reluctantly operated her primordial spirit to look inside her body, and sure enough, she saw that the Qiongyu branch had been broken. That's right, those punches just now were not only to humiliate her, but also to target the Qiongyu branch. The poison in his fists was used to attract the Qiongyu branch, and then he used the nameless sword to counterattack? Wang Lu's targeting was too strong. The existence of the Qiongyu branch was Qianghua's life-saving card. Even in Xingjing sect, only a few people knew about it, so what about him? That's right, previously she and Faceless One had a fierce battle. Perhaps it was at that time that she exposed a lot of her cards. However, after these thoughts crossed her mind, Qianghua suddenly realized a more serious problem. Red face, heavy armor, poisonous tail, this image, she had vaguely seen it somewhere before. Thinking to this, Qianghua couldn't even care about the shame and anger in her heart. She wanted to speak, but the poison spread, making her mouth and tongue numb. She wanted to use her primordial spirit to transmit her voice, but she found out that Wang Lu had used his non-phase sword qi to set up a defense outside his body, isolating all external forces from invading. But at this time he was still so cautious. Just as Qianghua gradually became anxious, Wang Lu suddenly opened his mouth. Senior Sister Qianghua, based on my understanding of you, you're actually not a cruel and bloodthirsty person. Whether it's in public, you need to consider the sect's prestige, or in private, as far as I know, you're a fairly generous lead disciple. However, in this world, you killed hundreds of millions of creatures without batting an eyelid, just because this is an immortal dreamland? Wang Lu said with a faint smile. That shouldn't be the case, right? Look, apart from you, every single one of the 5 chief disciples has invested their true feelings into this world. Because even if everything here is a dream, everything you do and every single action you take is something that really happened. You've killed hundreds of millions of creatures with your sword, aren't you afraid of being haunted by heart demons? Qianghua sneered in her heart, but the next moment, Wang Lu suddenly approached her and slowly said, "Of course you're not afraid." Fairy Qianghua has always done things in an open and above-board manner. Even though this sword has committed a monstrous sin, your heart is magnanimous and any heart demons can't entangle you. Because what you've killed are the creatures of the demon world, the irreconcilable enemies of human beings. The more you kill, the more clear your mind is. Qianghua closed her eyes and didn't speak. There were some things that she really disdained to explain. Wang Lu said, "Moreover, you don't want to leave this matter to others. You discovered the truth by chance the moment you entered this ring, but you didn't even tell your junior brothers and sisters by your side, and you didn't even contact the other 4 chief disciples. You only planned to bear everything by yourself because you believed that only you could bear this heavy burden. You're the lead disciple of Xingjing sect, and Xingjing sect is the leader of the Wanxian League. Right now, you're the fully deserving number 1 person among your peers. Even if it's me, under fair conditions, my odds of winning are only 30 to 40%. And after a few decades, you will become one of the youngest supremes in 9 regions. At the same time, you're more likely to take over the position of Supreme He too and become the leader of this world. In addition to supreme glory, this also means that it's difficult to shirk responsibility. Xingjing sect is often accused of being overbearing, but in the Great War of Immortals and Demons, Xingjing sect has contributed the most. This is the way of the king, right?" Upon hearing this, Qianghua's heart gradually calmed down, but at the same time she was even more puzzled. She didn't expect other people to understand these things. After all, everyone's position was different, so their horizons were different. But Wang Lu, since he could understand all of this, why would he? Thinking to this, suddenly, a gust of wind blew in front of her, and Wang Lu's heavy punch once again fell. This punch was exceptionally painful. "Senior Sister Qianghua, the affirmation in your eyes just now has strengthened my determination to wake you up." Wang Lu said, "If you're the kind of person who only cares about benefits and abandons all benevolence, righteousness and morality, I would be too lazy to care about you. But now..." Bam! Another punch. Qianghua felt that her eyes were somewhat unable to open, but even if she could open them, she really couldn't see through Wang Lu's next step. "Perhaps your understanding of the so-called way of the king is not wrong. Even the most generous king will become cruel to the enemy. But your sword strike that broke the world with ease reminds me of another kind of person." Wang Lu said, "They tie a large number of explosive talismans on their bodies, and fearlessly rush into the enemy's crowd to detonate them, causing heavy casualties. They face death calmly and at the same time, they don't care who died under the explosive talismans. Newlywed wife? A toddler learning to speak? Old people past their prime? It doesn't matter. They are the enemy, they deserve to die. In order to kill them I can pay any price. See, what's the difference between that and what you did?" Qianghua just sneered. Her mind was firm, how could it be shaken by words? Wang Lu also said, "Moreover, Senior Sister Qianghua, have you ever thought about what this immortal dreamland wants us to do? The one who built the entire group of immortal tombs is Dixian of 9 regions, but the background of this ring is set in the demon world. Moreover, everyone around them seems to be flesh and blood. Zhan Zai, that idiot, even fell in love with the forest fairy, or the demon forest demon. It can be seen that letting us deepen the contact and exchange with these demons is the deliberate intention of the designer. But what's the meaning of this design? I don't know what you're thinking, Senior Sister, but the way I see it, the designer clearly wants to tell us that even if they're absolutely irreconcilable enemies, they're still living beings of flesh and blood, and we share the same feelings." When Wang Lu said this, he suddenly felt that Qianghua under his feet fiercely trembled. Her tongue was paralyzed by poison, and her angry voice intermittently sounded, "So, you can even ignore the distinction between immortal and demon and call them brothers? Brothers?" Wang Lu smiled and shook his head, and then punched Qianghua in the face, making her completely shut up. Do they deserve it? That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.